Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the son of goddess of war and chaos. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's dive into the story. Naruto clenched his fist so hard that the knuckles popped, tension crawling up every nerve in his body as he stood outside Konoha's main gate at dawn, looking out over the world he had spent most of his life struggling to fit into. He was 17 now, tall by shinobi standards, hair as unruly as ever, bright blue eyes sharpened by anger he couldn't quite articulate. There was a feeling that had been haunting him for weeks, a presence, foreign and yet eerily familiar, brushing against the corners of his consciousness whenever he closed his eyes. He took that as a sign that he needed answers, and soon. Everyone else called him unpredictable and stubborn, but he didn't care. If there was something out there calling to him, something that might explain the strange whispers in his head, he was determined to follow it. He ignored the voices of the villagers who were already up and about, giving him cautious looks. He had never been popular in Konoha, but he used to crave acceptance. That desire was dying now. The older he got, the more he felt an internal blaze that demanded to be fed by conflict rather than peace. He was losing patience with people who told him to calm down, to be more heroic, to show empathy. He found the notion of being a conventional hero boring. There was a time he might have cared. But the weight of these cryptic signals inside him made him restless and moody, turning him brash, arrogant, rude. It felt better that way, honestly, like he was finally letting go of the illusions he'd lived under as a kid. He started walking, ignoring the curious looks. Even his old teacher Irika had noticed a shift in Naruto's aura these last few months. Kakashi, Tsunade, even Sakura, they had asked if something was wrong, but Naruto dismissed them. He didn't want to talk about it. All he knew was that every cell in his body seemed ready for war, as though violence was the natural state of his being. With that unsettled feeling prowling his thoughts, he slipped out of the village, figuring he could clear his head in the forests outside Konoha. But after a few steps among the trees, he felt that strange swirl of energy again. This time, it was stronger than ever, spiking the hair on the back of his neck. He whirled around in mid-step and then froze. A robed figure stood among the trees. Naruto didn't sense a typical shinobi presence. This stranger wore dark fabric embroidered with foreign symbols that made no sense in the context of the ninja world. He had a pale face, almost inhumanly so, and eyes that glowed with faint gold light. Despite the man's seemingly slim build, Naruto could feel raw power radiating from him, like a miniature sun. The intruder's presence was an immediate threat. Naruto's instincts roared. He bared his teeth, not exactly smiling, but grinning in a challenging way as adrenaline spiked through his veins. The stranger said nothing for a moment, just stared. Naruto snapped at him to talk or leave. The figure let out a thoughtful hum, then announced in a calm, unsettling voice that they had come to deliver a message from realms beyond mortal comprehension. Naruto, unamused, demanded details. The figure explained that Naruto's existence had long been hidden behind a veil, but certain powers were stirring, and the time for secrets was ending. Naruto's birth mother was no mere mortal, no Konoha civilian who died in the Ninetales attack. Rather, the robed figure insisted, Naruto had the blood of a war goddess. Her name was Inayo, an ancient deity from a pantheon that hailed from a land and dimension called Greece. It seemed impossible, insane. Naruto had read about other continents in vague references, but Greek gods? Myths? He would have laughed, except something about the man's voice resonated too precisely with that internal presence Naruto had been feeling for months. He realized the conversation was rattling him more than he cared to admit. So he resorted to rudeness. He sneered, spit on the ground, told the messenger that if this was some scheme, he'd break the man's face. His chest felt hot, uncomfortably so, but not from anger alone. There was an excitement that made his blood fizz. War goddess. The words wouldn't stop echoing. Konoha had hidden the truth, or maybe they hadn't known. Regardless, nobody had bothered to tell him. He was sick of being in the dark. Without warning, his chakra flared, that swirling red aura that sometimes manifested when he drew on the Ninetales. But it felt different now, laced with something else, something he couldn't name. The messenger stepped back, obviously startled, then formed a small shimmering orb in his palm to defend himself. Naruto lunged, crossing the clearing in a heartbeat, aiming a punch at the man's face. He wanted to test if these rumors of gods had any substance. The messenger blocked, but the force behind Naruto's strike sent him staggering. Leaves whipped around them as energies clashed. The messenger hissed that attacking was pointless, that he was only here to deliver a revelation. Naruto scoffed, ignoring that, driving his foot into the man's ribs, forcing him to stumble again. He wanted more details, or he'd beat the man to a pulp. The messenger finally caved, admitting that Io, goddess of war and sibling of Ares, had sired a child with some powerful mortal father to further her domain of chaos. That child was Naruto, hidden across dimensions so no other god could sense or eliminate him before he matured. The messenger didn't know more than that. He was only entrusted to pass on the knowledge and open the path if Naruto chose to accept. Naruto felt a flicker of satisfaction. He asked how to get to Io. The messenger responded that only gods, demigods, or those chosen by the fates could easily breach the barrier between the mortal plane and Olympus, but perhaps Naruto could tear it open by force if his powers awakened fully. Then, in a swirl of wind and sparkling motes of golden light, the robed figure vanished, leaving Naruto alone beneath rustling leaves. The forest was quiet for a few heartbeats, and Naruto's mind was anything but. If his mother was a goddess, that changed everything. He suddenly recalled every dream in which a fierce feminine voice whispered to him about carnage, urging him to embrace the thrill of battle. He recalled how the Nine Tails had once mentioned that Naruto wasn't any normal shinobi. Now everything started to click into place, and a crooked grin tugged at his lips. He refused to go back to the village. This was his quest, nobody else's. He sprinted deeper into the forest, launching himself across branches, ignoring the swirl of warnings in his head. He didn't want to hear caution. He wanted action. He needed to see this goddess for himself, look her in the eye, and demand to know why she had abandoned him in the shinobi world. Maybe she had a good reason, or maybe she didn't. In either case, he felt an uncontrollable rage growing as he thought about it. He'd been used, it seemed, as a pawn by everyone, by Konoha, by the gods, by fate. He was done playing the fool. He traveled for half a day, until the sun was high overhead, the forest thinning out into a wide cliffside. He stood on the edge, scanning the horizon. That's when he felt a ripple, like the air was being parted. A swirl of energy manifested near a rocky outcropping. It looked almost like a distortion in the environment, a transparent wave in the shape of a doorway. Naruto approached it cautiously, senses on high alert. The swirl stabilized, forming a shimmering portal. Without hesitation, he stepped through. On the other side, dizziness attacked him, and for a moment he saw swirling colors, felt his stomach lurch. Then his feet hit solid ground, and the portal vanished behind him. He found himself in a place that was both familiar and alien. Tall trees, but different than the ones in the Fire Country. These had thicker trunks, drooping branches with different kinds of leaves. The air smelled crisp and slightly salty, like an ocean not too far away. Birds cawed overhead, and far off, he saw what looked like a wooden archway near a lush strawberry field. For some reason, the presence that had been haunting him for weeks flared up again, stronger this time, and he involuntarily let out a low growl. This was not Konoha. He could sense many strange energies. Some felt human, some not. Curiosity spurred him on. He walked briskly toward the orchard, ignoring the fact that he was a complete stranger in this land. As he passed the archway, he noticed a weathered sign that read Camp Half-Blood. He didn't know what that meant, but the place reeked of demigods. His mother was apparently a Greek goddess, so maybe these people were distantly related to him, or something. Whatever the case, he was prepared to beat down anyone who got in his way. A group of teenagers milling about in orange shirts spotted him and fell silent. One of them, a strong-looking brunette with a sword strapped to her waist, approached. She asked who he was, her tone cautious. Naruto responded flippantly, told her to mind her own business, then turned to keep walking. But another voice called out from behind him, male, maybe around Naruto's age. He had messy dark hair and striking green eyes. The boy was giving him a guarded look. It took Naruto a second to place him, but something in the back of his head said Percy Jackson, though Naruto had no idea how he knew that name. Maybe the messenger's talk about demigods was messing with his perception, or maybe something deeper was going on. Percy asked what Naruto was doing there, if he was a new demigod camper. Naruto spun on his heel, annoyance spiking. He spat that he wasn't here to join their little camp. He was looking for something bigger, and if they didn't like it, they could fight him. A hushed murmur went through the other demigods. They clearly weren't used to such blatant hostility. Percy frowned, stepping closer, cautious but also not intimidated. He could sense that Naruto was dangerous, but refused to show fear. He asked if Naruto even knew who ran this place, that the gods were quite protective of their domain and their children. Naruto just snickered, replying that he was used to dealing with powerful forces. After all, his father was the fourth Hokage, his mother a goddess of war, apparently. He felt unstoppable. He wasn't going to bow to some camp's rules. A tension sparked in the air, thick enough to cut with a kunai. Before either side could escalate, an older man, a centaur, trotted up. He introduced himself as Chiron, caretaker of demigods, and politely asked Naruto to calm down so they could talk. Naruto was unimpressed but decided to hold off on violence, at least momentarily. Chiron asked if Naruto had come to see the gods, or if he was seeking refuge. Naruto responded that he wanted to find the goddess who birthed him, this Inayo, and that if anyone tried to stand in his way, he'd wipe them out. Percy and the other campers exchanged uneasy looks. The name Inayo was known to them, an embodiment of war, sister to Ares, an unpredictable deity rarely invoked these days. That meant Naruto was no ordinary demigod. He could be a threat to the entire camp if he lost his temper. Naruto watched their reactions with a sneer, quite pleased with the fear in their eyes. He hadn't planned on hurting any of them, unless they forced his hand, but he liked how it felt to be recognized as dangerous. That same presence in his head was practically humming with satisfaction. Maybe part of him wanted to cause chaos, to challenge and conquer. It was like a new, raw appetite that had been awakened. His old drive to be Hokage seemed hollow now. Why rule one village when entire realms of gods and men lay beyond it? Chiron, trying to keep things civil, suggested that if Naruto was truly of Inayo's blood, the best approach was to speak with the oracle or request an audience on Olympus. Naruto scoffed, asked how to get there. Percy cut in, explaining that demigods usually use certain magical portals, or that they traveled via a special elevator in the Empire State Building in Manhattan. The comedic nature of that statement wasn't lost on Naruto, but he didn't laugh. Instead, he demanded to know if Percy would show him, or if he'd have to figure it out alone. Percy replied that forging ahead blindly would probably get Naruto killed. Naruto's lip curled. He retorted that the only reason he might consider not going alone was so he wouldn't waste time searching for Olympus. If these people knew the route, maybe they'd be useful. If not, he'd find it himself. Some of the demigods bristled at Naruto's arrogance. One tall, muscular guy started to step forward with a weapon in hand, but Percy put a hand on his shoulder to stop him, guessing that fighting a direct child of a war goddess might be ill-advised. Naruto noticed that some of the young women in the camp were giving him odd looks, curiosity, interest, maybe even attraction. He shot them a cocky grin, though part of him was slightly confused by this. He'd never had girls react to him in that way before. Whatever. He brushed it off. If they wanted to stare, let them. The presence in his head responded with a predatory purr, encouraging him to indulge in whatever amusements came his way. He quietly shook off the feeling, not wanting to get distracted. Right now, the goal was to find his mother. He let Percy and Chiron lead him to a big house at the edge of the camp, where they'd presumably talk about the next step. The entire walk, Naruto could sense the power in the air, illusions, wards, maybe blessings from the Greek gods. It all felt foreign to him, but also strangely close to the fury simmering inside. They entered a large living room area, where a small satyr waited, eyeing Naruto warily. Percy introduced him as Grover. Naruto just nodded, not really interested. He demanded to skip introductions and small talk. Chiron sighed and began to outline how the Greek pantheon worked, That if Naruto was indeed Inao's son, he could find answers by going to Olympus or by drawing out her attention through acts of intense conflict that might lure her in. Naruto decided that going to Olympus was probably more direct. If conflict came along the way, so be it. They talked about how traveling to Manhattan from here required mortal transportation, cars, buses, trains, unless they had a special blessing from the gods. Naruto, brimming with chakra and an eagerness for action, said that was a waste of time and threatened to create his own route. They ended up negotiating that Naruto would remain in the camp for a day or two, at least to learn the basics of how gods and demigods operated in this dimension, to avoid catastrophic misunderstandings. Naruto grumbled, but Percy assured him it was the logical step. Chiron even offered to arrange a meeting with Dionysus, the camp director, though Naruto's eyes were already glazing with disinterest. Walking out of the big house, Naruto allowed himself a moment to observe the camp's layout, cabins arranged in a horseshoe, each representing a different Olympian deity. Kids moved around, training with swords, practicing archery. Naruto almost snorted in mock amusement. Archery? Swords? Child's play. With his ninjutsu, he could obliterate all of them if he wanted. But he had to be careful. There were actual gods here, presumably with powers that dwarfed typical shinobi skills. Still, none of it made him anxious. If anything, it gave him a perverse thrill. He was itching to test himself against something bigger, meaner, more challenging. He wanted to push himself to the edge of what he was capable of, maybe surpass it entirely. Percy brought him toward one of the cabins, suggesting that he bunk there for the night, given that Naruto didn't have a known patron cabin. Naruto almost refused, but then realized he had nowhere else to go until he figured out a direct path to Olympus. He stared around, noticing glances from other campers, especially the more confident girls, some of whom looked like they might be daughters of Aphrodite or other goddesses. They gave Naruto subtle smiles, but he wasn't in the mood to chat them up. He was short-tempered, and even though a small, primal part of him was intrigued by their interest, he just gave them a dismissive glance. Percy exhaled, told them to give Naruto some space. The group began to disperse. Naruto followed Percy into an empty cabin and tossed his gear down on a bunk. He decided he was hungry. Percy, awkwardly offering some courtesy, escorted him to the dining pavilion. The place bustled with chatter. Naruto drew stares when he arrived, but he didn't care. He grabbed some food, ignoring curious looks, and ate in silence. That was, until a couple kids from the Ares cabin stomped over and demanded to know who the tough guy was, claiming they recognized the aura of war coming off him. One kid, tall with a buzz cut, sneered that if Naruto was so special, maybe he should prove it. Naruto's eyes narrowed with delight. A fight sounded like a perfect way to burn off tension. Percy tried to intervene, but Naruto shot him a glare, telling him to step back if he didn't want to join in. The kids from Ares' cabin smirked, probably expecting an easy brawl. They left the dining pavilion and headed to an open training area. Word spread fast, and a crowd gathered. The Ares kids unsheathed weapons. Naruto, wearing his usual orange and black outfit from the shinobi world, just cracked his neck. No one told him the camp had rules about lethal combat. Or maybe they did, but he was too tense and impatient to care. The first kid lunged with a sword, aiming to slash across Naruto's chest. Naruto sidestepped easily, grabbing the kid's wrist mid-swing and twisting until the sword clattered to the ground. He kicked the boy in the back, sending him sprawling in the dust. Another charged with a spear, thrusting straight at Naruto's abdomen. Naruto flicked a kunai from a pouch at his thigh. He still carried his ninja gear, and used it to deflect the spearhead with a piercing metallic clang. Before the boy could recover, Naruto slammed a knee into his side, hearing a grunt of pain. The crowd murmured, startled. Naruto hadn't used any advanced jutsu yet, just physical skill. It was obvious he was on a different level. More of the Ares kids rushed him. He blurred between them, weaving in and out of their attacks with an almost lazy confidence. They were strong for demigods, but they lacked cunning, and their raw power was nowhere near enough to rattle him. He hammered them one by one with swift blows, not caring if he bruised them badly, or if it was humiliating. He could have ended it with a single ninjutsu, but part of him relished the personal, hands-on approach. By the time the last one stumbled back, panting, the circle of onlookers was silent, stunned by how easily Naruto had dominated. Naruto simply snorted, pulled a small cloth from his pocket to wipe a bead of sweat from his forehead, and turned his back on them. He half expected someone to take a cheap shot, but no one dared. He left them all behind, returning to the bunk, ignoring Percy as he tried to catch up. Once inside, he took a deep breath, feeling that warlike energy humming in his core. He felt strong, unstoppable, ravenous for a real fight. If that was the power of being the son of a war goddess, he couldn't wait to see how it would manifest when he met her face to face. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. He didn't bother with the campfire or any other social nonsense. He spent the time pacing outside, thinking about how to leave for Olympus. He considered forcing open some dimensional rift with raw chakra, but the messenger had said that might require an awakened power. Maybe he'd wait until morning, interrogate Chiron or Percy more thoroughly, then go. As for Konoha, he shrugged. He didn't even know if he'd ever go back. The place was stifling, full of hypocrites and useless sentiment. If he ended up as something beyond mortal, maybe it was time to leave his old life behind. He lay down on the bunk eventually, drifting into a restless sleep filled with nightmares and half-formed visions. He heard a woman's voice, steely, commanding, edged with brutality. He saw glimpses of a battlefield lit by lightning, scarlet banners flapping in a scorching wind. Bodies lay broken, and there was a triumphant laugh echoing across the carnage. He sensed that laugh was his mother's, or maybe it was his own. In the dream, he walked among the wreckage, feeling no pity, only exhilaration. He saw a flash of burning eyes in the darkness, and the voice said, "My son! Our war is just beginning!" A fierce jolt of energy slammed through him, and he woke up panting, sweat trickling down his neck. Dawn was barely breaking. He flopped back on the pillow, thinking about those images. War was coming, or maybe war was already within him. The though made him grin lazily. He got up, ignoring the stiffness in his shoulders, and stepped outside. The camp was starting to stir. He saw some campers heading off for early morning drills, but he skirted around them to head for the big house, determined to corner Chiron into helping him get to Olympus immediately. But as he rounded the porch, he saw Percy waiting there, arms folded, expression guarded. Percy asked if Naruto really intended to just barge into Olympus. Naruto answered yes, unless Percy wanted to help him do it more smoothly. Percy sighed, possibly weighing the risk of letting an overpowered, antagonistic demigod tear through the god's stronghold. After a moment, he said there might be a way, but it involved traveling to Manhattan by normal means first, then using the entrance the demigods used. Naruto shrugged, as though that was acceptable, if a bit slow. As they were talking, Chiron emerged, eyes flicking from Percy to Naruto. He tried to reason with Naruto that it might be wise to gather more information on Inio, and on how the Greek pantheon might react to her offspring. Naruto stood firm. If they wanted to keep stalling him, he'd leave right now and figure it out on his own. Chiron relented. Fine, if Naruto insisted, they could set off later that day. Percy offered to accompany him, partly because Percy was too curious to let this potential walking disaster roam free. Naruto didn't care about the real reason. If Percy was a child of Poseidon, as he'd overheard, that might actually be useful if they ran into sea monsters or something on the way. Not that he was scared, but it could speed things up. They prepared quickly. Naruto didn't have much to pack, he already carried his ninja tools. Percy grabbed his pensword Riptide and some supplies. Some other campers wanted to come, but Naruto immediately shot down the idea of traveling with a group. He didn't want to babysit a bunch of amateurs. So it was just Percy, who led them to the boundary of Camp Half-Blood and out into the mortal world. Naruto tried to act unimpressed, though part of him was fascinated by the modern city life that sprawled beyond the camp's protective wards. He'd read about advanced technology in other lands, but seeing cars, highways, bustling crowds, he realized how small his viewpoint had been in Konoha. They took a bus to Manhattan. The ride felt painfully slow to Naruto, who kept fiddling with the seat, snapping at Percy if he tried to strike up conversation. He glared at other passengers who stared at him. A few times, he nearly unleashed a fraction of his power to scare them off. but he managed to restrain himself. Once they arrived in the city, the noise and chaos assaulted Naruto's senses. He felt strangely at home in the pandemonium, crossing crowded streets with Percy, ignoring traffic lights, weaving among honking cars. Eventually, they reached the Empire State Building, the supposed gateway to Olympus. Percy explained that they had a way of persuading the guard to let them use the special elevator. Naruto just rolled his eyes, muttering that the gods had weird ways of hiding. They approached the front desk. Percy exchanged some words with the guard, showing him a special card or something. The guard gave a subtle nod and motioned them to a private elevator. Naruto stepped in, heart pounding in anticipation. Was he really going to meet the gods? He felt a twisted excitement, along with the unstoppable arrogance that told him he had no reason to fear them. The elevator soared up, numbers blinking. They went way past the normal floors, up into what had to be some magical dimension. Finally, the doors opened with a chime that echoed unnaturally. Naruto stepped out first. Before him stretched the gleaming cityscape of Olympus, golden towers, marble pillars, a vibrant sky streaked with pink and orange like eternal sunset. It was awe-inspiring, and yet Naruto refused to be impressed outwardly. He stuffed his hands in his pockets, glancing sidelong at Percy, who was clearly more respectful. They hadn't taken more than a few steps before a swirl of wind and lightning crackled in front of them. A tall figure with a stern face, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes like thunder glared down at them. Percy stiffened, obviously recognizing the king of the gods, Zeus. Naruto felt the presence like a hot brand on his skin. This was indeed a being of cosmic power. But again, that rebellious part of him wouldn't stand down. Zeus demanded to know why the son of Inayo had come to Olympus uninvited. Naruto felt a flash of defiance at the mention of his lineage. He spat back that he had every right to be here, that he wanted to meet his mother and get answers. Zeus's eyebrows shot up, and an undercurrent of electricity sizzled in the air. Percy winced, probably expecting a lightning bolt to come hurling their way. But Naruto stood firm, arms crossed. A few other gods began to appear, some in shimmering flashes, others in more subtle illusions. Naruto recognized Ares by the sheer aura of aggression that emanated from him. Ares eyed Naruto with contempt, possibly feeling threatened that another war-centric being was among them. Athena watched from a distance, calculating. Hermes hovered behind Zeus, smirking as though this was all a curious bit of drama. Naruto demanded to see Inayo. The gods shared a look. Finally, Ares barked that Inayo didn't exactly receive guests, that she spent most of her time in the thick of cosmic strife. He sneered that Naruto was no real child of war, just a mortal brat with a big mouth. Naruto's anger spiked. He recognized the challenge, and he was more than willing to respond. He marched right up to Ares, ignoring Percy's frantic whisper to be careful, and glared up at the war god with an unflinching look. Ares leaned down, a savage grin on his face. "Watch your tone, kid, or I'll show you what real war looks like." The tension in the air soared. Naruto practically vibrated with power. He had never faced an actual god, but he wasn't afraid. The presence in his head, that savage part of him, was urging him to push forward, to throw the first punch. He almost did, until a ripple of red energy shimmered in the space between them, revealing another figure. She had wild, crimson-tinted hair, eyes blazing like coals. She wore armor that seemed fused to her body, etched with archaic symbols of destruction. The gods parted respectfully, albeit warily. Naruto didn't need an introduction. The second he saw her, he knew who she was, Inayo, the war goddess, mother of horrors. She locked eyes with him, letting out a low, predatory chuckle. So the rumors were true, her lost son had returned. The air itself felt heavier, like it was weighed down by centuries of bloodshed and savage conflict. She gave a mocking half-bow in Naruto's direction, as though appraising him. He stared back, heart pounding. Anger warred with curiosity, and that unsettling sense of recognition. "So," Inayo said in a voice that could cut steel, "you've finally found me." Naruto's fists clenched again. Words caught in his throat. He struggled to hold on to the smugness that had carried him here. How could he not be rattled? This was the goddess whose presence had brushed against him in his dreams all his life. She wore a vicious smile, an expression that was neither maternal nor kind. Still, he sensed a strange sense of pride in her gaze, almost like she approved of his fearless attitude. He opened his mouth, about to unleash a tirade of accusations. Why did you abandon me? Why hide me away? What's with this unstoppable hunger for battle inside me? But Inayo raised a hand, silencing him. Lightning danced across her fingertips, flickering from deep red to black. We have much to discuss, my son, she purred. Naruto felt the raw power of war swirl around him, as if the entire pantheon was holding its breath. The other gods exchanged looks, some intrigued, others apprehensive. Percy stepped back, uncertain whether to intervene or watch. For Naruto, the moment was surreal. He'd finally come face to face with the war goddess who had given him life. Now, with all the rage and all the longing he had bottled up, he was about to cross into a world that would challenge everything he thought he knew. Whatever came next, it would be anything but peaceful. And somehow, that suited him just fine. He felt a low, feral grin tug at his lips. If he had to burn the world to get the truth, he would. Inayo seemed to sense his resolve. She inclined her head, a small gesture that commanded him to follow. Around them, gods rumbled in disapproval or curiosity. Ares folded his arms, scowling. Zeus thundered that this had better not disturb the balance of Olympus. But Inayo ignored them, turning on her heel and leading Naruto deeper into the realm of immortal splendor. He followed without a word, a cocky swagger in his steps. Percy, uncertain but unwilling to leave his new acquaintance, or rival, alone, followed at a distance. In that moment, Naruto realized he had crossed the threshold that would change his life forever. The world he knew had ended the second he stepped through that portal in the forest. And in this new reality, overshadowed by the gods, overshadowed by war and chaos, Naruto had no intention of bowing to anyone, even his own mother. He was determined to claim the power of a war goddess's son for himself, no matter what it cost. And so the first seeds were planted for a confrontation that would shake both the shinobi world and the realm of the Greek pantheon, a collision of two realities tied together by one rude, brash, unstoppable boy named Naruto. The path forward promised conflict, cunning alliances, and the looming shape of something bigger than mere mortal struggles. On Olympus, that presence in his mind hummed with satisfaction. He was finally where he belonged, standing on the edge of the greatest battlefield yet to come. Naruto stood in the shadow of Olympus's towering pillars, following behind Inayo with a disdainful slouch and a hard scowl. The grand marble corridors echoed with the brisk click of his mother's armored steps. The other gods retreated to their domains, or at least stepped aside, watching him with wary fascination. Percy lingered a few paces behind, conflict evident on his face. He didn't want to provoke Olympus, but he also didn't trust Naruto to handle the gods diplomatically, or at all. Inayo led them into a secluded courtyard where rose bushes coiled around white columns. Statues of past battles lined the perimeter, chipped and flecked with dried crimson that might have been paint, or might have been something else. She halted abruptly and turned. Her eyes, red like embers, locked onto Naruto's. He could feel raw, molten energy thrumming in her aura, something that spoke to his own savage instincts. Naruto crossed his arms. He didn't greet her. He didn't say anything. A silent standoff stretched. Eventually, Inayo's lips twitched. I never thought you'd make it here so quickly, she said, voice echoing off the marble. Most demigods fumble around for years before they even suspect a divine lineage. But you have a gift for destruction, my son. A natural warlust that calls out to me across worlds. Something flickered in Naruto's expression, annoyance mixing with curiosity. You telling me that's why you left me in another dimension? Because I'm some tool you plan to pick up later? His chakra rose with each word. The nine tails churned within him, but more than that, there was a new force, something deeper and older. It was hot in his veins, different from the fox's malevolent fire. It felt like an echo of Inayo's own warforged power, and it fed his growing temper. Inayo gestured dismissively. I do not plan. I am war, child. I exist in the thick of chaos wherever it brews. When you were born, you were an experiment of sorts. Not all the gods approved, but I don't care for their approval. I left you in a realm that had its own brand of violence. To see you thrive amid shinobi was my way of testing you. And you exceeded my expectations. Naruto wanted to retort, but the moment he opened his mouth, thunder boomed nearby. Percy spoke up, anxious. If you really care about your kid, maybe don't treat him like some lab rat. It was a gutsy statement, considering he was speaking to an Olympian goddess. Inayo turned that piercing gaze on Percy and gave a cold, humorless grin. Percy's knuckles tightened around Riptide in his pocket, but he held his ground. Inayo shifted her attention back to Naruto. Why did you seek me out so soon? I can sense your frustration. Is it simply about answers, or do you crave something else? Like power? She spoke the last words with deliberate weight, as if trying to stoke a dormant flame in him. Naruto's lip curled in a sneer. I want to know who I really am. I want to stop hearing all these whispers. And yeah, if there's power that belongs to me, I'll take it. If it's mine by right, nobody's gonna stop me. Inayo's laughter was low and dangerous, reverberating through the courtyard. Brash. Unyielding. That's good. But be warned, child, the rest of the Pantheon won't be as amused by your insolence. She raised a hand, lightning coursing around her fingertips in jagged arcs. I could awaken that war god's blood within you, let you taste a fraction of true chaos. But once that door is open, you won't be able to shut it. You'll burn with conflict wherever you go. Your thirst for battle will overshadow everything else. Naruto tensed. Part of him recoiled at the idea of losing all sense of control. Another part, some dark, smoldering corner, craved it, yearned to unleash that savage intensity on anyone who dared cross him. He remembered how it felt to effortlessly flatten the Ares kids, how every blow sent a thrill of satisfaction through his bloodstream. Fine, he said. I can handle it. Percy hissed. Naruto, that's insane. You don't want to make an enemy of all the gods. Naruto spun, voice a snarl. I'm not scared of them. Or you. Quit trying to act like my friend, Jackson. I didn't ask for your help. Inayo watched them both, amused. She drew a slender blade from the sheath at her hip, its steel black and rippling with otherworldly fire. In a blur, she slashed the air in front of Naruto. He stiffened, readying a counter, but the strike didn't land on him. Instead, the blade carved something intangible, creating a rift in the space between them. A swirling, crimson-tinged vortex opened, crackling with energy. He felt a tug at his consciousness, an echo that resonated in his own warlike aura. Step through, Inayo said in a silky voice. This is a fragment of my personal domain. If you can withstand it, you'll earn the right to the power of war. Percy gaped. Hold on, that's insane. You can't just. But Naruto didn't wait for Percy's warning. He was too furious, too enthralled by the idea of unlocking the truth about himself. He lunged through the portal, ignoring Percy's shout. The vortex snapped shut behind him. Everything went dark, except for flickers of scarlet lightning. He heard whispers, shrieks, clashing swords, the rumble of far-off artillery. It was like he'd stepped into a battlefield that spanned eons, every war from every history converging. A nauseating wave of aggression slammed him. His mind reeled as images and sensations that weren't his own flooded him, armies colliding, screams of victory and terror, the thunder of hooves, the roar of cannons. He staggered and dropped to one knee, nails digging into the ground. The place beneath him felt like rough stone, slick with old blood. The stench was thick and metallic. A faint glow in the distance revealed silhouettes locked in eternal combat, phantoms of warriors from countless eras. At first, the onslaught tore at his sanity. He felt a surge of panic that threatened to overwhelm him. But then came a snap of recognition, that same primal rush he'd felt in so many battles. All these illusions of war, this chaos, he fed on it. He forced himself to stand, blood pounding in his ears, and let out a ragged laugh. If this was his mother's domain, if these illusions of war were meant to break him, they would fail. Battle was in his DNA. He snarled at the howling winds, at the flickering shapes. Is that all you've got? Thunder rumbled, and the illusions surged. 1,000 phantom warriors charged him, their shrieks echoing with inhuman reverb. Naruto formed hand seals, unleashing his chakra in a defiant wave. Raisengans, burning with a new dark energy, exploded from his palms, ripping through the illusions. Sparks of lightning and swirling red aura whipped around him. He roared, forging a path through the chaos, each blow intensifying his adrenaline. With every fallen phantom, the swirl of war inside him grew, like he was absorbing the essence of conflict. Eventually, the illusions broke into dust, leaving him alone in the silent gloom, panting and trembling. A rush of heat flooded his body. His eyes glowed faintly red, as though reflecting the blood-soaked ambience. That power, he could feel it now, amplified, deeper than the Ninetales, something older and more savage. Suddenly, the domain cracked, and he stumbled forward, blinking as the real world snapped back into focus. He found himself back in the courtyard with Inayo and Percy. Naruto's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his brow, a wild gleam in his eyes. Inayo let out a delighted laugh. "You've taken a first step, my son. From now on, that war god's blood will surge in you whenever conflict erupts. You'll find your chakra twisting, your ninjutsu laced with destructive force. Harness it, or let it consume you." Percy stared at Naruto, clearly alarmed by the transformation. He could sense that Naruto's aura was darker now, spiked with a violent intensity that hadn't been there before. Naruto tried to steady his breathing and stand tall, refusing to show weakness. He cricked his neck, feeling that unstoppable energy thrumming along his spine. "You talk like you're testing me," he growled at Inayo. "But I'm not your soldier." Inayo's eyes glimmered with pride, or something close to it. "Of course not. You're free to carve your own path. But keep this in mind, the gods won't simply let you roam unchecked if you cause too much disruption." At that, a booming voice cut through the air. Zeus appeared at the edge of the courtyard, lightning crackling across his shoulders. "Inayo, you dare awaken such chaos in Olympus?" His glare swept toward Naruto, crackling with disapproval. "You, boy, your insolence can be tolerated only so far." Naruto's new war aura flared. "Go ahead, old man. Try something." Percy practically jumped between them, hands raised. "Zeus, wait, maybe we can keep things under control without." Inayo waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, hush, brother. This is my child. Don't pretend you haven't turned a blind eye to Ares' tantrums for centuries." Zeus snarled, but clearly weighed the option of challenging Inayo directly. The tension in the air was electric. Then he snapped. "Fine. But do not say you weren't warned if your offspring steps out of line. The laws of Olympus apply to all, god, demigod, or monster." With that, he vanished in a crackle of lightning. Naruto rolled his eyes at the melodrama, but Percy was visibly shaken. "You'll make enemies you can't handle if you keep insulting them," Percy muttered under his breath. Naruto didn't answer, turning toward Inayo. "So now what?" Inayo's gaze flicked over him, a calculating gleam in her eyes. "Now, child, you live your life as you please. War is infinite. It will call to you wherever you go. If you want to devour the worlds you traverse in flames, that's your choice. If you want to temper it and find your own rules, that's also your choice. But," she paused, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a murmur, "don't forget that I gave you this. You share my blood. If you have need of me, I'll be watching." Her words felt like an invocation, prickling across his skin. Then, without warning, she turned into a swirl of crimson smoke and disappeared. The silence that followed was jarring. Percy let out a slow breath. "She left just like that? You don't have more questions for her?" Naruto shook his head. "I got what I wanted. Maybe not all the details, but I can feel it. That power. Now I can figure things out myself." Percy didn't look entirely convinced, but what else could he do? "So, are you staying in Olympus? Or heading back to Camp Half-Blood?" Naruto snorted. "I need to see more of this world. If the gods have issues with me, let them come. I'm not gonna sit around singing camp songs." He gave Percy a side glance. "But if you want to tag along, I won't stop you. I guess you might be useful." Despite Naruto's rude tone, Percy caught the slight invitation hidden beneath. He offered a small shrug. "I'm not letting you wander unsupervised. No telling what kind of chaos you'll stir up. Let's head back to the mortal world, Chiron's probably having a panic attack. They made their way out of the courtyard. The path back to the elevator was strangely quiet, as if Olympus itself watched them, uneasy about the goddess's dangerous son roaming about. No other gods confronted them, though Naruto felt a handful of piercing gazes from high balconies and hidden corridors. It seemed the Pantheon was content to let him go for now, but the tension lingered, a silent threat. At the elevator, Percy swiped the special keycard, and they descended through a dizzying swirl of lights. By the time they stepped off onto the ground floor of the Empire State Building, Naruto's fists were clenched, his heartbeat still spiking with that heady war blood rush. It was almost addictive. He needed to do something, anything, to burn off the energy. Percy must have sensed it because he quickly suggested, "Maybe we head back to camp. If you're going to blow off steam, it's safer there." Naruto's answer was interrupted by a sudden pulse in the air. A shrill screech rang out from somewhere nearby. People in the lobby looked around in confusion, but Naruto and Percy immediately recognized something supernatural had crossed into the mortal realm. A second screech tore through the building, followed by a crash. Percy drew Riptide with a fluid motion. Naruto cracked his knuckles, an eager grin tugging at his lips. They darted outside, scanning the street. Amidst the towering skyscrapers and honking traffic, a monstrous shape clung to the side of a building, an oversized griffin, its feathers slicked with black tar, eyes glowing bright red. It must have torn free from some mythical domain, or maybe it was lured by the sudden spike of warlike energy Naruto radiated. People on the sidewalk screamed and scattered as the griffin launched into the air, diving toward them in a swirl of wings and razor talons. Percy cursed, rolling aside as the creature's claws raked the pavement. Naruto didn't move aside. He leapt straight up, meeting the griffin in midair. His war-charged chakra crackled, swirling around his fist in a savage distortion. He smashed his punch into the griffin's flank, sending it crashing into a parked car with a shriek of twisted metal. The beast's shrill cry rattled the glass windows around them. The griffin wasn't dead, just furious. It spread its wings and lunged again, snapping its beak. Percy slashed with Riptide, scoring a glowing line across the creature's shoulder. Naruto dashed to the side, eyes glowing faintly red as he fed off the confrontation. With a swift motion, he molded a Rasengan. But this wasn't the usual spinning orb of chakra. Red sparks rippled through it, an echo of Inaios' domain. It hissed and crackled. Naruto slammed it into the griffin's chest, unleashing a concussive blast that sent feathers and embers flying. The monster screeched and disintegrated into golden dust on the spot. Panting slightly, Naruto let his arm fall, smirking. He felt that sizzling war power coil in his gut, ready for the next fight. Percy surveyed the scattering remains and exhaled, relief and alarm mingling in his expression. "Well, guess we solved that. But we better get out of here before the mortals start asking questions." Police sirens were already wailing in the distance. Naruto turned to go, but out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure at the end of the street. She was leaning against a lamppost, dressed in modern clothing, a sleek black jacket, dark jeans, auburn hair flowing over her shoulders. Her face was all sharp angles, radiant in a dangerous way. She wore an odd half-smile. Naruto sensed something off about her, a power that was definitely not mortal. Their gazes locked. Her eyes glinted with recognition, or perhaps invitation. Before Naruto could react, a crowd of frightened pedestrians surged in, forcing him to step aside. By the time he looked back, the woman was gone. He felt a vague sense of disappointment, for reasons he couldn't pin down. Percy tugged at Naruto's sleeve, urging him to keep moving. They slipped away before the authorities arrived. They ducked into a nearby alley, taking a moment to catch their breath. Percy scanned the surroundings, then turned to Naruto. "Look, I know you're in a hurry to do something. But maybe we go back to camp, figure out how to control that new power of yours. That griffin was drawn here, and it might be because of you." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "So? Good. I want stronger foes. If that's all this world has to throw at me, I'll be bored quick." "Dude, you don't get it. You're not in your shinobi dimension anymore. The gods keep an eye on anomalies like you. If you start luring monsters into the city, they'll come after you, or they'll clamp down on you somehow. Do you really want Zeus breathing down your neck? Naruto paused, considering. The part of him enthralled by war craved more battles, but another part recognized that going up against the Pantheon every hour could be annoying. Perhaps it would be better to gather info, to pick and choose his fights. With a scowl, he gave a curt nod. Fine. We'll go back to that camp of yours. But I'm not staying forever. They hopped on a train out of Manhattan, blending into the crowd. During the ride, Naruto noticed how fidgety Percy was. Something was bugging him. Eventually, Percy spoke in a low voice. Listen, about that woman you saw. I think I caught a glimpse of her, too. She felt like a goddess or something. Could be someone linked to Inio, or maybe another war deity. The Pantheon is huge. Some of them have complicated alliances. Naruto shrugged. Let them come. If they're trouble, I'll handle it. Yet he couldn't shake the memory of her eyes. There had been a subtle promise in them, like an invitation he didn't fully understand. That lingering thought set his nerves on edge in a strangely exciting way. They transferred onto a bus near the countryside that skirted past half-forgotten roads. Eventually, late in the evening, they arrived back at the edge of Camp Half-Blood. Percy guided Naruto through the invisible boundary that protected the camp. The place was aglow with lanterns, demigods milling around the dining area for dinner. Whispers spread quickly that the rude new arrival had returned. Chiron met them near the big house, looking anxious, hooves stamping the ground. He demanded a quick explanation, and Percy gave him the condensed version. Naruto had visited Olympus, awakened some more power, fought a griffin in Manhattan. Chiron's expression turned grim at each new detail. He looked at Naruto with a mix of concern and resignation. You attract trouble, Naruto. You'll need training and caution if you're to remain in this realm without plunging it into endless conflict. Naruto snorted, not bothering to hide his contempt. I can handle myself just fine. But if you have tips, let's hear 'em. Otherwise, stay out of my way. Several demigods nearby bristled at his tone, though some, especially a few daughters of Aphrodite, seemed unbothered, even intrigued. Their curious glances made Naruto uncomfortable in a new way, as if his war-charged aura was also drawing a magnetism he wasn't used to. He forced himself to ignore it, focusing on more pressing matters. Chiron sighed. You should rest. Let Percy show you to a place you can stay. We'll talk strategy in the morning. Naruto merely shrugged and followed Percy. A couple of the older demigods tried to approach him, but he brushed them off. The entire camp felt stifling. He was itching to do something else, fight, travel, test himself. But for now, he'd tolerate it. That night, he barely slept, pacing outside the cabin he'd been assigned. Visions of the day's battles swirled in his head, accompanied by flashes of that unknown goddess's face. Sometime past midnight, he felt another prickle of power. He stepped out under the moonlight, scanning the silent camp. For a second, he thought he saw that woman from Manhattan standing near the tree line. But when he blinked, she was gone. A teasing breeze ruffled the branches. He inhaled sharply, tasting the electricity of an unseen storm. Maybe it was a sign that bigger forces were already closing in on him. In that restless moment, he thought of Inio, of her savage grin, of the domain she had forced him to endure. He felt that warlust flare, remembered the rush of confronting illusions of conflict, how exhilarating it was to unleash destruction. If that was the gift he'd inherited, maybe he should embrace it fully, let himself burn a new legend across the Pantheon and beyond. A smirk tugged at his lips. Whatever the future held, it wouldn't be dull. Exhaling, he stepped back into the cabin, ignoring the uneasy sting in his chest. The goddess's words echoed in his mind, "Don't forget that I gave you this." War simmered beneath his skin, an unsteady heartbeat promising him an endless horizon of battle. As he drifted off, half-lucid images of infinite warfare rolled across his dreams, and in their midst, the faint glimmer of a woman's smile, auburn hair catching the moonlight. Morning would come soon, and with it, Camp Half-Blood's attempts to shape or contain him. But Naruto had never been one to be contained. Not by Konoha, not by the Hokage, and certainly not by the gods. If this place wanted a piece of him, He'd let them see how savage the secret son of the war goddess could really be. And if any powerful female deity wanted to test his defiance, well, Naruto wasn't exactly against forging a different kind of alliance, so long as it suited him. The camp torches flickered in the distance as he let himself sink into a restless doze. Outside, the hush of nighttime was deceptive. Conflict brewed just over the horizon, and Naruto was more than ready to meet it head-on. Naruto woke at dawn in a foul mood, mind fogged by fragments of restless dreams. He stepped out into the crisp morning air, eyes flaring red for an instant before dulling back to blue. The half-suppressed war power inside him was growing more insistent by the hour, a throbbing presence in his chest that threatened to pour out. He didn't like admitting he was on edge, but Percy noticed anyway, offering a wary greeting as he approached. Naruto answered with a curt nod, scanning the horizon. Camp Half-Blood was already stirring. Demigods headed off for chores, small groups shuffled toward the armory, the usual morning routine. Naruto grimaced. He respected strength, but this place felt too structured, too safe. His entire being itched for a real challenge. Percy suggested they grab breakfast in the pavilion. Naruto trudged along in silence, ignoring the curious stares of campers who still whispered about how he'd flattened the Aries kids on his first day. Some seemed enthralled, others nervous. One or two shot him glares that promised future confrontations, but none made a move yet. He guessed they'd learned a lesson. Tangling with the war goddess's son was no joke. That knowledge fed the war lust simmering inside him, made his blood pound, yet it wasn't enough to satisfy him. In the pavilion, the usual routines played out, demigods lining up, offering part of their meal to the camp's hearth before eating. Naruto, unimpressed, simply helped himself to food and plopped down. A hush spread around him. He pretended not to notice. Within minutes, Chiron approached, hooves clopping on the smooth stone. He asked, in that polite tone of his, if Naruto would meet him for a private discussion once he finished. Naruto replied with a shrug. Percy said he'd come too. Chiron's face betrayed relief. Apparently, they wanted to keep an eye on him. Naruto didn't argue. He was curious about whether the camp had any real answers for him, or if they'd just tried to rein him in. After scarfing down food, he followed Chiron and Percy to the big house. In a cramped study lined with ancient scrolls, a dim lamp flickered. Grover the Satyr was already there, nibbling a tin can anxiously. Chiron settled on a large chair modified for a centaur's frame. He fixed Naruto with a calm, steady gaze. Naruto, by now you've seen what your presence can do. Monsters sense you. The gods are wary. Even your aura draws power-hungry beings to you. Unless you have some plan to remain hidden, which I doubt, this realm will be rife with conflict wherever you go. He paused, letting the gravity of that sink in. We want to help you control it, or at least shape how it manifests. Chaos can be devastating if left unchecked. Naruto rolled his shoulders in a dismissive motion. I'm not here to ask for permission. But if you've got info on these gods or ways I can figure out my next steps, lay it on me. If not, don't waste my time. Grover muttered that they had compiled some knowledge about lesser-known war deities, Eris, the goddess of discord, who was rumored to manipulate strife from the shadows, Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror incarnate, often allied with Ares, even Nemesis, the goddess of divine retribution. If Naruto was a new factor in the delicate tapestry of war deities, those with aligned domains might take interest, some might want to ally, others might see him as competition to be eliminated. At the mention of possible alliances, a flicker of excitement coursed through Naruto. This was exactly the type of chaos that stirred his blood. Percy cut in, arms folded. We've also got an issue. Ever since you arrived, the barrier that protects Camp Half-Blood feels off. It's like your energy is triggering something. Monsters are getting bolder. The Griffin in Manhattan might have been just the first of many. If we don't address it, the camp might get overrun. He sounded both concerned and annoyed, as though pointing out that it was Naruto's fault. Naruto snorted. So? Strengthen your barrier. Or do you expect me to babysit this place? I'm not a guard dog. Chiron tried for diplomacy. We understand you owe us nothing. Still, I'm offering a trade of sorts. If you allow us to run some tests, magical readings, Ways to measure your unique power. Perhaps we can craft something that dampens the constant broadcast of war aura. You'd have more freedom to move about without drawing monstrous attention everywhere you go. Naruto considered, fists tightening. You want to put some seal on me or something, huh? I've had enough of seals, trust me. He thought about the nine-tailed seal, how it had governed so much of his life. But maybe these readings were different. Fine, he said at last. But if anyone tries to lock my power away, you'll regret it. Chiron nodded. Understood. Then come with me. He led Naruto and Percy out of the big house and toward a secluded area near the pine tree that marked the camp's highest hill. Several satyrs and a couple of older demigods were setting up runic stones, forming a circular pattern in the grass. At the center stood a tall mirror-like surface framed by twining vines. Chiron explained it was an ancient scrying device gifted by the oracle. By focusing the right incantations, they could glean insights into Naruto's divine lineage. Naruto watched skeptically as they arranged themselves in a half-circle around the artifact. One of the older demigods, a tall girl with silver streaks in her hair, spoke a chant, tapping a staff on each rune in sequence. The mirror's surface flickered, going from reflective glass to swirling silver mist. A hum pervaded the air, tugging at Naruto's war-infused chakra. Then, in the mist, shapes flickered, faint silhouettes of armor, flames licking at the edges, faint silhouettes of a woman's eyes. Naruto's breath caught. He knew those eyes were Inayos, but there was more. Another shape loomed behind her, a slender silhouette in deep shadows, eyes gleaming with cunning. A whispering voice echoed, Eris. The war lust in Naruto's blood flared, reacting to that name. So Eris was paying attention. The chanting demigods exchanged uneasy glances. Suddenly, the scrying device crackled, shifting into a chaotic blur. The swirling silver erupted into black smoke, and an unearthly laugh rang out. Something was hijacking the scrying. Everyone froze, unsure whether to back away or continue. Then the smoke condensed, forming a fleeting image of a woman with auburn hair. She was the same woman Naruto had glimpsed in Manhattan, leaning casually against an ornate throne. Her lips curled in a feral smile. Before the vision dissolved, she murmured, Why so serious, dear nephew? Let's have some fun. The last word reverberated in the clearing, and then the mirror's surface cracked. A wave of energy pulsed outward, knocking the demigods off their feet. Naruto swayed but stayed upright, refusing to give ground. When the smoke cleared, Grover rushed over, wide-eyed. That was Eris. She must have forced her way into the scry. He spun to Naruto. Seems she's eager to meet you. That's not good news. She's the embodiment of strife and discord. Where she goes, betrayal and conflict follow. If you link up with her, or if she tries to manipulate you, who knows what chaos might ensue? Naruto grunted, actually intrigued. Eris calling him, dear nephew, implied some twisted familial connection through Inayo. Maybe it was a ploy to get under his skin, or maybe it was the truth. Either way, the idea of meeting a goddess of discord gave him a strange rush of anticipation. He was already bridging the shinobi world in Greek myth, so what was one more step into madness? He liked that these gods weren't all squeaky clean heroes. It fit his changing perspective of the world. After all, he, too, was no shining paragon. Before anyone could piece together a next move, an alarm horn sounded near the camp's entrance. Demigods scrambled to their feet, grabbing weapons. The cry spread fast. Something was attacking from the coastline. Naruto's war sense lit up. He turned to Percy, who was already running downhill. They wove between cabins, heading toward the beach where the camp's boundary touched the sea. Sure enough, monstrous shapes surged in the surf, sea serpents of some kind, their scales glinting in the morning light, hissing and gnashing. A smaller serpent had already crossed the sand, snapping at a cluster of campers. Naruto cracked his knuckles, the war thrum rising in him like a living thing. Percy leapt forward, slashing with riptide, drawing the monster's attention. His strikes were swift, water swirling around him like a protective aura, but there were multiple serpents. Another huge one lunged from behind. Naruto sprang into action, forming a Rasengan suffused with that new red aura. He drove it into the serpent's flank, ripping through scaly hide in a burst of briny blood. The beast howled, twisting around to snap at him. Naruto vaulted back, eyes flashing. He was already forming hand seals for a wind-style, spiraling breakthrough. With the war power fueling him, a fierce wind blast whipped the serpent off its coils, sending it thrashing. A second serpent lunged. He sidestepped, seizing it by the neck and slamming it into the sand. The savage rush of violence was exhilarating. He saw Percy battling two at once, their huge jaws clamping down. Percy's water manipulation knocked one serpent aside, but the other wrapped him in scaly coils. Gritting his teeth, Naruto launched himself forward, summoning a swirl of swirling red chakra that crackled around his fists. With one savage blow, he snapped the serpent's hold on Percy, then followed up with a palm strike that gave the monster's snout inward. It dissolved into a spray of golden dust, leaving only a faint hiss in the air. Percy staggered free, panting, gratitude flickering in his eyes despite Naruto's rudeness. The rest of the serpents hissed in unison, then sank beneath the waves. Maybe they sensed they'd bitten off more than they could chew. Demigods rushed to secure the boundary, chanting wards, ensuring no more monstrosities would slip in. The beach stank of salt and churned up sand. Naruto wiped his brow, ignoring a shallow cut on his arm. He felt alive, dangerously so. He turned to Percy, who was catching his breath. "So this is normal around here?" The question dripped with sarcasm. Percy let out a short laugh. "Not exactly. Attacks happen, but not this frequently. Pretty sure your presence is stirring up everything." A few other campers approached to check on them. Naruto noted that some looked at him with grudging respect, possibly for how he fought off the serpents. Others, especially the more cautious types, showed nervous glances, like they knew he was bad news. Chiron arrived, breathless, along with a handful of senior campers. He surveyed the damage, then looked at Naruto. "It seems Eris may have already begun. Discord sows chaos in all forms, and with your war aura, it's like gasoline on a flame." His voice was firm but not accusatory. "I suggest we find a way to negotiate or confront her. Otherwise, every monster lurking in the seas, mountains, and skies will start testing our defenses." Naruto eyed the horizon. The idea of endless battles was tempting, but he recognized that mindless monster raids wouldn't help him learn more about his heritage. Besides, being pinned down at camp wasn't part of his plan. He wanted to explore, to roam. He wanted to see if there were other secrets in the Greek world, things that might deepen his power. The key, evidently, was to find Eris or at least glean what she was after. "Fine," he said. "How do we track her?" Chiron mulled that over, glancing at Percy. "Eris is elusive, but she thrives on gatherings of potential conflict. I suspect she'll be drawn to places where tensions are high, perhaps the city again, or somewhere a feud is brewing. Another approach is to consult the oracle, but the oracle typically speaks only in riddles. Still, we might glean a clue." Percy nodded. "Let's head to the oracle. It's in the attic of the big house. We can at least try. Maybe it'll give us a location or a hint on how to deal with Eris." Naruto let out a low grunt of assent. He was already trudging away from the beach, warlust still coursing through him. Demigods cleared a path. Nobody seemed eager to stop him. He could sense the tension in the air, the fear that each new hour might bring more monstrous attacks. That was the effect he had. It made him smirk darkly. This world better learn to handle his presence, or it would break. Percy followed, matching pace, while Chiron cantered behind them, orchestrating repairs to the barrier as they went. They reached the big house attic with minimal fuss. Dust swirled in the shafts of light that seeped through the slats. The oracle, a dried-up mummy-like figure draped in ancient robes, sat in a rocking chair, empty eye sockets gazing into nothingness. The air crackled with old magic. Percy glanced at Naruto, who just frowned, unimpressed. Then Percy cleared his throat. "Oracle, we seek guidance on Eris, the goddess of discord, and her interest in—" He paused, grimacing slightly. "The child of Inio." For a moment, nothing happened. Naruto scowled, about to say this was a waste of time. Then the mummy jerked upright, a bluish mist pouring from its mouth. A hollow voice hissed through the attic, words laced with eerie resonance. Conflict's child meets discord's Callan mortal realm. Chaos shall befall beneath the moon in a city of lies where blades meet pride and passion dies. A festival beckons, born of strife to claim the war blood. Gods contrive trust none, not mortal, not divine, for the path of ruin is entwined yet. Should wars e'er shatter the mold, a new age dawns, unwritten, untold. With that final line, the oracle slumped back, the bluish mist dispersing. Silence choked the attic. Naruto gazed at the figure, feeling the echo of those words vibrate in his skull. A festival beckons, born of strife, in a city of lies. Something about where blades meet pride sounded suspiciously like a place where swords or daggers were central. But it could refer to anywhere. Percy rubbed his forehead. Well, it's a riddle, obviously. City of Lies might refer to somewhere famous for corruption, or illusions. Naruto recalled the flash of modern buildings, neon lights, that he'd glimpsed in the shinobi world's faraway lands. Or maybe the oracle pointed to a place in this realm, like Las Vegas or Hollywood. He'd heard those places were dens of illusions. A festival born of strife, he repeated under his breath. It stoked a memory of the woman with auburn hair. He felt certain Eris was behind it. The oracle also warned to trust no one. That suited him fine. He already doubted everyone. Chiron exhaled slowly. We have no direct map to Eris, but we do have hints. Perhaps we can investigate potential high-conflict events. The City of Lies, some interpret that as a reference to illusions or deception. There's a place that hosts an underground arena, blood sports disguised as legitimate competition. Rumor says immortals sometimes join for entertainment. If Eris stoked that conflict, it'd be quite the spectacle. Percy threw up his hands. Underground arena? Sounds risky. But if that's where we can find Eris. Naruto's eyes lit up. Arena fights? Now that's something I can get behind. Let's go. Despite Percy's caution, Chiron nodded. We'll arrange a small team to investigate. It's too dangerous for one demigod to wander into Eris's nest. Percy, I entrust you to keep an eye on Naruto. He paused, looking pained. Naruto, please do your best not to escalate every situation into a war. Naruto flashed a feral grin. No promises. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Percy gathered supplies, ambrosia, nectar, mortal world cash, while Naruto, restless, paced around, ignoring the curious stares of the other campers. Now and then, a demigod would try to chat him up, but he brushed them off. He didn't trust them, he didn't need their friendship. The only times he showed mild interest were when some of the bolder girls approached. One tall, bronze-skinned daughter of Athena tried to spark conversation, referencing battle strategies. Naruto appreciated her confidence, but quickly grew bored with her obsession for tactics. Another, a mischievous daughter of Hermes, teased him about how hot he looked with that warlike glare, earning a faint smirk before he dismissed her too. He still remembered that auburn-haired goddess, the subtle promise in her eyes. No mortal demigod could compete with that predatory allure. By nightfall, they were ready. Percy led him to the camp boundary, where a magical taxi, operated by some wild-eyed sisters called the Grey Sisters, waited. Percy muttered that he hated dealing with them, but they were fast. Naruto eyed the rickety car suspiciously. After some bickering between the sisters, who shared a single eye, they screeched onto the road, winding through dark highways at breakneck speed. Naruto clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to punch them for driving so chaotically. Percy just groaned, apparently used to it. They arrived at a bustling metropolis hours later. Dazzling neon signs blinked overhead, reflecting off glass skyscrapers. Late-night traffic clogged the streets. The Grey Sisters dropped them off in a deserted lot, demanding payment. Percy tossed them some drachmas, and they screeched off into the night. Naruto stepped forward, scanning the skyline. The place practically buzzed with tension. He had no idea if it was genuine or just his warlust feeding off the city's chaos. Either way, he liked the feel of it. Percy checked a slip of paper with an address scrawled on it. Chiron said we should look for a nightclub near the waterfront. That's where fights are rumored to happen in the basement. We'll see if we can find a lead on Eris. Naruto nodded and followed. They wove through narrow alleyways, ignoring suspicious glances from late-night crowds. Eventually, they reached a sleek, unmarked building pulsing with bass-heavy music. A neon sign above the door read Barathrum in stylized letters. A bouncer stood at the entrance, arms folded like stone pillars. He gave them a once-over, unimpressed, and asked for invitations. Percy hesitated, but Naruto stepped forward, slipping easily into his old routine of intimidation. "We're here for the fights," he said bluntly. The bouncer raised an eyebrow. "You got the gold to enter?" "The house don't let just anyone in." Naruto smirked, letting a flicker of red aura coil around his eyes. The bouncer's face twitched as if some primal part of him recognized a predator. Then he jerked his head, motioning them inside. Percy exhaled, relieved. They entered a dim, smoky room where music throbbed, multicolored lights slicing the darkness. People danced or drank, oblivious to two newcomers. A hallway in the back led downward. They walked it, noticing each step took them deeper underground, away from mortal eyes. The bass faded, replaced by raucous cheering. Soon, they emerged onto a balcony overlooking a sunken arena lit by flickering torches. Dozens of onlookers lined the stands, chanting as two fighters clashed below, one a hulking minotaur, the other an agile demigod with glowing gauntlets. It was brutal and mesmerizing. Percy hissed under his breath. "This is insane! They've got actual monsters fighting in front of mortals?" Naruto scanned the crowd. Many watchers didn't look human. Possibly minor deities, nymphs, or other supernatural beings. He felt that warlust surge. The place reeked of violence and adrenaline. Perfect for Eris. If she was anywhere, it'd be here. He scanned the higher balconies, and sure enough, he caught a glimpse of auburn hair disappearing behind a pillar. His heart thumped. "She's here," he muttered. They made their way through the throng, ignoring the stench of sweat and spilled drinks. Some recognized Percy's aura as a demigod and stepped aside. Others stared at Naruto, unsettled by his raw hostility. He shoved past them, following that fleeting spark of auburn hair. Down a corridor behind the stands, they found a private lounge draped in deep crimson fabrics, candles flickering along the walls. At the far end stood the woman, swirling a glass of dark wine. Eris. She regarded them with a cunning half-smile. "My dear nephew," she said, voice mockingly sweet. "And Percy Jackson, champion of the seas. How delightful!" Percy tensed, tightening his grip on Riptide, but Naruto just let out a quiet snarl. "You wanted me here, right? What's your game, goddess?" Eris gave a soft, musical laugh. "Game? Everything's a game to me. But you, child of Inio, oh, you're special. War made flesh, yet unbound by the old treaties. You can tip the scales of conflict in any direction. Imagine the discord you and I could sow." She took a step closer, eyes gleaming with predatory interest. Naruto felt a sudden heat coil in his chest, different from the raw lust for battle. Something about her presence was too enticing, too dangerous. Her aura prickled against his war power, like two puzzle pieces that clicked but threatened to combust. He refused to back down, lifting his chin defiantly. "I don't serve anyone. Not you, not Inio, not the gods." Eris smirked, twirling a lock of auburn hair. "I don't ask for servitude. I ask for partnership. Chaos is lonely when you're the only one truly enjoying it. If you stand at my side, imagine the worlds we can unravel." "I know that part of you craves it." Her gaze slid sideways to Percy, who bristled. "Of course, your do-gooder friend here might object." Percy snapped. "Stay out of my head, Eris. We're not letting you twist Naruto into some weapon for your amusement." Eris rolled her eyes. "So protective. You mortals are adorable." She waved a hand, conjuring a shimmer of dark energy that rippled across the lounge. Percy tensed, expecting an attack, but instead the walls shifted, revealing a panoramic window looking into the arena. Down below, a new bout began, a savage clash of swords between two demigods, each with an enchanted blade. Eris gestured expansively. "Strife is in our nature, nephew. Yours and mine. Why deny it? The more you fight it, the more it festers. Why not revel in the carnage?" Naruto's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms. Her words struck too close to the unsettling truth. Ever since he'd awakened Inayos' blood, he felt unstoppable on the battlefield, but also unhinged. Part of him wanted to drown in that chaos. Another part, smaller but persistent, warned him not to become a mindless puppet. "I'm not your toy," he said quietly. Eris's eyes glimmered with amusement. "No, you're much more than that." Before he could retort, the lounge door burst open and a group of heavily armed guards rushed in, humans or demigods, but each bristling with weapons. Their leader, a burly man with a patch over one eye, raised a sword. "Eris, you're meddling again," he growled. "The house doesn't allow gods to rig our fights." Eris sighed theatrically. "Oh, Mortalis, you do amuse me. Care to test your bravado?" The guards advanced. Percy, alarmed, raised Riptide. Naruto's smirk returned. Fine, if they wanted a fight. In a flash, Eris simply laughed and dissolved into shimmering smoke, leaving them to the guards. Naruto couldn't tell if she was fleeing or just setting the stage for more discord. Either way, a brawl was imminent. The one-eyed leader snarled, "Seize them!" Naruto's chakra flared bright red, the war lust spiking at the promise of carnage. 3 guards charged with spears. He moved in a blur, sidestepping the first thrust, catching a spear shaft under his arm, and wrenching it free. With a violent sweep, he bashed the second guard and slammed the spear butt into the third's stomach. Percy spun behind him, Riptide singing through the air as he parried a sword strike. Sparks lit the dim lounge. Shouts and cursing filled the space. Naruto ducked a wild swing from the one-eyed leader, then kicked out, driving the man hard into the wall. The impact cracked the plaster. Another guard lunged from behind. Naruto twisted, ramming an elbow into the attacker's ribs. That savage thrill pulsed in his veins. He let out a barking laugh, eyes glowing faint red. The guards, though well-trained, had no chance. He was a demigod in the purest sense of the word, war incarnate. Within moments, the group lay groaning on the floor, weapons scattered. Percy, panting slightly, shot Naruto a look that was equal parts caution and reluctant admiration. A piercing whistle rang out from somewhere in the corridor. More guards? Possibly. Naruto snapped. "No time for this. Eris is the real goal." Percy nodded. They dashed out of the lounge, stepping over a half-conscious guard. The hallway led to a twisting labyrinth of corridors, some lined with flickering torches, others with blinking neon signs. The deeper they went, the more they sensed faint illusions at work. Eris's domain, perhaps, scattered illusions to lure them astray. At every turn, they glimpsed shadows that shifted, laughter that echoed, footfalls that stopped abruptly. Percy muttered curses under his breath. Naruto shoved open door after door, revealing storerooms filled with contraband weapons, a deserted training pit, a small library of ancient scrolls. No sign of the goddess. At last, they stumbled into a grand chamber with black marble floors and tall pillars carved with swirling serpents. There they found her, perched atop a dais as if waiting. Auburn hair glowed in the torchlight, and her lips curved at their entrance. "Persistent, aren't we?" Naruto stormed closer, ignoring Percy's urgent attempt to hold him back. "Stop playing games," he snapped. "Either fight me or get out of my way." Eris gave a soft, dangerous chuckle. "Fight you? Why would I do that when there's so much more fun to be had?" She raised a hand, and from the pillars, swirling illusions formed. 6 identical copies of her, each with the same sly smile, ringed the chamber. Naruto felt the energy spike. The illusions whispered, their voices overlapping. "Join me, nephew. You're already dancing on the edge of oblivion. Let me push you over." A savage grin split Naruto's face. "Try it then." The war chakra flared around him in a raw, red aura. He lunged for the nearest illusion, fist blazing. It vanished the instant he struck. Another illusion laughed behind him. Percy yanked him aside as a wave of chaotic energy crackled past. Eris's illusions swirled in a storm of laughter, the real goddess somewhere among them. Each time Naruto attacked, he smashed a copy into mist, only to find another flickering behind him. Percy tried to help, summoning a torrent of water from nowhere, sweeping the illusions aside. But more took their place. Chaos magic danced on the marble floor, fracturing it with purple flames. Naruto's frustration built. The hunger for destruction battered at his self-control. He roared, forcing chakra into a swirling Rasengan that crackled with war aura, then hurled it at the illusions in a wide arc. It tore through half the copies in a violent burst, forcing Eris to appear in her real form at last, though it was unclear if she'd been forcibly exposed or chose to reveal herself. She emerged from a haze of purple sparkles, cheeks flushed, eyes alight with excitement. "Oh, that's more like it! Such raw, uncontrolled force!" She raised her palms, summoning a swirling black orb. Sparks hissed around it. Percy yelled for Naruto to dodge, but Naruto only braced himself, building another jutsu. Their attacks collided mid-air in an explosive shockwave that cracked the pillars and sent shards of marble flying in every direction. Dust choked the room. Even Percy was thrown back, landing hard on the floor. For a heartbeat, everything was chaos. When the dust settled, Naruto stood amidst rubble, knees bent, panting. Eris lingered a few paces away, also breathing heavily. A slash of red energy still danced along Naruto's forearms, and Eris's aura flickered black and violet. She gave him a slow, almost appreciative nod. "Not bad, nephew. You nearly singed me. But I think that's enough for one night. This was just a taste." Her tone teased, an undercurrent of something more. She slowly stepped backward, shadows gathering around her ankles like living smoke. "Seek me again when you tire of playing hero, or anti-hero, or whatever you fancy yourself. War and discord go hand in hand, child. You can't deny me forever." With a final, mocking bow, she dissolved into darkness. The chamber fell silent aside from the crackle of dying flames. Percy picked himself up, coughing. "She got away, that was a close one. If that's the kind of chaos Eris can unleash, we might need help." Naruto flexed his fingers, warlust still burning. He couldn't deny the thrill Eris evoked in him, nor the unnerving allure of her presence. But he also felt a stab of indignation that she treated him like a toy or, worse, an incomplete reflection of her power. He spat dust from his mouth. "If she thinks I'll run to her side so easily, she's wrong." Percy shook his head. "She's not the type to give up. You heard the oracle. She'll keep pushing until something breaks." He scanned the ruined chamber, then motioned for them to leave before more guards or illusions popped up. Naruto followed, stepping over chunks of marble. His war aura hadn't fully receded. It left him restless, muscles twitching as if craving more combat. Back in the corridor, they met only scattered onlookers, some wounded guards, none willing to challenge them further. They slipped out of the underground complex into the cool night air, where the city lights gleamed. Car alarms blared somewhere in the distance, sirens whined, and the faint smell of gasoline wafted on the breeze. Naruto inhaled it all, eyes still glowing faintly. Percy dragged a hand down his face, exhausted. "We should get out of here, maybe find a safe place to crash. We can head back to camp in the morning." Naruto gave a terse nod, although safe place wasn't exactly on his agenda. The night had left him uneasy, excited, wanting more. The tension with Eris, and the possibility she wasn't alone in coveting his power, loomed like a storm. For once, he didn't mind Percy's company. The demigod was at least strong enough to keep up, not that Naruto would ever say it aloud. They navigated deserted blocks until they found a shabby motel that didn't ask too many questions about late-night arrivals. Percy paid the clerk with mortal cash. Naruto silently followed him to a cramped room, flopping onto one of the two creaking beds. Staring at the ceiling, Naruto brooded over the oracle's words. Trust none, not mortal, not divine. He wasn't naive enough to trust Eris, but was he equally foolish to trust anyone else? Even Percy? Even Konoha? The old illusions of camaraderie in the shinobi world felt distant. Here, gods moved people like chess pieces. He had no interest in being anyone's pawn, but to stand truly alone, that also carried a certain weight. He shut his eyes, trying to still the swirl of warlust that buzzed incessantly. Eventually, he drifted into a fitful sleep. He dreamed of a blood-red moon hanging in a black sky, a twisted carnival in the distance, lights flickering amid screams and laughter. Eris wandered those carnival grounds, beckoning him, while a faint silhouette behind her watched with glowing eyes. That presence felt eerily familiar, like a mirror of his mother's savage domain. In the dream, Naruto walked forward, stepping over broken cobblestones. Bodies of creatures he couldn't name lay strewn about, some half dissolved into golden dust. Eris smiled, beckoning with one finger. Then the moon cracked, and he jolted awake, sweat trickling down his face. Panting lightly, he glanced at Percy, who was still asleep. Naruto threw a hand over his eyes, frustration boiling. This goddess nonsense was more complicated than he'd expected. But at the same time, he couldn't deny the dark excitement it stirred. If the Pantheon tried to break him, he'd break them first. If Eris wanted him as an ally or a weapon, she was in for a rude awakening. Still, part of him wondered if forging alliances with certain goddesses, even a harem, as brazen as that sounded, might give him the upper hand in this realm. Some of them obviously took an interest in him. Mortals might call that ambition or arrogance. Naruto simply called it opportunity. If the gods played with mortal hearts, why couldn't he do the same? Morning came too soon. Percy insisted they return to Camp Half-Blood, regroup, and share what they'd learned. Naruto found it tedious, but he went along for now. No better plan presented itself yet. They hopped onto a bus that swayed through the city traffic, then traced their route back toward the countryside. Along the way, Naruto leaned against the window, gazing at the passers-by. Mortals rushed about their day, oblivious to the cosmic machinations swirling around them. He almost envied their ignorance. At the camp boundary, the tension was noticeable. Satyrs dashed around with worried looks. The demigods were on high alert. Another monster incursion must have happened while they were gone. Chiron greeted them, relief in his eyes when he saw they were safe. They updated him, describing the underground arena, Eris's illusions, and the cryptic confrontation. Chiron's grave expression deepened. "She's testing you," he said to Naruto, "and possibly sowing discord among others who covet your power. This is bigger than just you or the camp. If you plan to remain in this world, you'll have to navigate alliances carefully." Naruto merely shrugged. "I do things my way. If the gods don't like it, too bad." Percy shot Chiron a worried glance, as if to say, "He's impossible." But the centaur only gave a resigned nod. "Then all we can do is prepare. If Eris stirs up trouble again, we must be ready. And you," he fixed Naruto with a steady stare, "should be careful how far you indulge this warlust." Naruto turned away, uninterested in lectures. He brushed past several curious demigods, ignoring their questions. In the back of his mind, he felt a lingering excitement. Eris had challenged him. Inayo, his mother, had awakened the war blood in him. Other deities might soon join the fray. And if Eris's illusions hinted at anything, it was that she wasn't the only goddess intrigued by him. Perhaps, in due time, more would step out of the shadows, some hostile, some friendlier. He thought back to the glimpses of female immortals near Olympus or in the camp's library murals, dark-haired goddesses of the night, fierce warrior queens, cunning enchanters. A slow, wolfish grin curved his lips. Maybe forging a small legion of goddesses under his sway was not out of the question, if they found him interesting enough. Let them come. Late that afternoon, a subtle hush descended on the camp. The sky darkened with thunderclouds that hadn't been there moments before. Zeus's weather tantrums, perhaps. Naruto watched from a hill as thunderheads rolled in. He found the rumble strangely comforting, reminiscent of the adrenaline before a big fight. Percy approached, shoulders tense, raindrops hitting them both. "Chiron says we should talk. Plans are in motion. We can't just wait for Eris to strike again." Naruto jammed his hands in his pockets. "Let's hear it then." Percy gestured for Naruto to follow, leading him into an open-air amphitheater at the camp's edge, where some senior demigods and a few satyrs had gathered around a flickering brazier. Chiron stood at the center, expression solemn. "Everyone," he began, "we face uncertain times. The balance of the Pantheon is shifting. New variables, like Naruto, child of Inayo, introduce friction. Eris thrives in friction. If she manipulates enough players, we could see an all-out divine conflict." He paused, looking at Naruto. "We ask that you stand with us, at least long enough to prevent a catastrophe. Another war of gods could devastate mortals. Naruto stared back, defiance in his eyes. I didn't start this. The gods did. But I don't like being used. If Eris wants me, she'll have to come get me. And if standing here helps me get closer to the rest of the Pantheon, fine. I'll fight by your side for now. Relief rippled through the gathering. A few demigods gave uncertain smiles. They broke into smaller discussions about reinforcing wards, forging alliances with friendly gods, scouting for monster hotspots. Naruto mostly tuned them out, arms crossed, gaze wandering. He felt a shift in the air and turned to see a newcomer stepping into the amphitheater, a tall woman, dark hair braided intricately, bronze armor glinting over a flowing robe. Her eyes were cool gray, calculating. Even Naruto recognized her, Athena, goddess of wisdom and war strategy. The demigods immediately quieted, some bowing. Athena's gaze swept over them until it landed on Naruto, who refused to look away. Chiron bowed politely. Lady Athena, we didn't expect a visit. She nodded curtly. The situation has become complex. My father Zeus is displeased by Inaio's sudden reappearance. Ares is furious he wasn't consulted. And Eris runs wild. I come to warn you, the Olympians are divided on how to handle this new war heir. Her eyes flicked to Naruto. Your existence stirs old grudges. Naruto's jaw tightened. So? Let them be stirred. Athena's expression hardened. Mind your tongue. You may possess a fraction of war's power, but you are not above the Pantheon's laws. She paused, studying him. Yet I sense you've inherited more than battle lust from Inaio. You have cunning potential, if you'd harness it. Recklessness will only ensure your downfall. Naruto sneered. I don't need your advice. He was about to add something crass, but a deeper instinct nudged him not to dismiss a goddess of wisdom so casually. Athena seemed to sense his hesitation, for she allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile. I see you're at least capable of a moment's thought. I will offer this, the threads of fate wrap around you. Learn to read them, or they will strangle you. If you change your mind about hearing counsel, I will be watching. Her presence carried a cool authority that differed from Eris's wild chaos or Inaio's savage violence. As she turned away, Naruto noticed some of the demigods gaping. It wasn't every day Athena herself dropped in to speak so directly. She headed off without waiting for a reply, disappearing among swirling raindrops. The amphitheater was silent for a beat, until Chiron let out a breath. Take that as a sign the Pantheon is paying close attention. Naruto looked up at the roiling sky. He could almost feel eyes on him, Ares' seething glare, Zeus's thunderous disapproval, Eris's playful grin, Inaio's distant amusement. Perhaps others as well. Maybe some goddesses, intrigued or appalled. The corners of his mouth lifted in a mirthless smile. War was in his blood, conflict was inevitable. If the Pantheon wanted to hover, let them. He had no intention of bowing. If anything, he'd use them to propel himself to new heights. The meeting dispersed. Percy approached, wiping rain from his face. Guess you're stuck with us for now. At least until we figure out the next step. Naruto glanced sideways. Don't get too comfortable, Jackson. I'm not your comrade. But yeah, I'll hang around. Could be interesting. Percy managed a weary grin. That's the closest you've come to friendly all day. Naruto snorted, turning away, though a faint smirk played at his lips. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the rain intensified. The camp's lanterns glowed in the twilight, illuminating the paths between cabins. He marched back toward his assigned lodging, ignoring the droplets soaking his hair. He felt a slow burn of anticipation. Eris was out there, stirring conflict. Athena might be plotting strategies. Other goddesses, some as yet unseen, could be weighing whether to intervene. And in the midst of it all, Inaio's son walked a razor's edge, unafraid to tip the balance if it meant sating the savage hunger inside him. If the next step dragged him deeper into war, so be it. He was done tiptoeing around timid minds. He was made for this. Lightning flashed across the sky as he crossed the threshold into his cabin. A promise of storms yet to come. Let them come, he thought. He was war's chosen, after all, and the dance of gods and mortals had just begun. Lightning rattled the sky above Camp Half-Blood, rain hammering on cabin rooftops in a rhythmic fury. Naruto stood by a window in his cramped quarters, arms crossed as he gazed out. The storm had rolled in alongside Athena's cryptic visit, just another sign that the Greek pantheon was watching him. He could feel their gazes like static in the air. Tension spiked inside him, that warlust thrumming in his veins. The night dragged on, shadows dancing in the corners of the room. Sleep was impossible. By daybreak, the storm had retreated to a grumbling overcast. Naruto dragged himself outside, half expecting another cluster of wide-eyed campers, but they kept a respectful distance. He noticed a few more nods of acknowledgement, maybe even grudging admiration. Still, the air at camp felt too thick with caution. Everywhere he turned, demigods hustled about, arms full of supplies, eyes flickering to him and then away. That sense of preparation warned him trouble loomed just over the horizon. Percy found him by the archery range, stepping around puddles with a worried frown. "Hey," Percy began. "Chiron wants us to meet at the big house again. Apparently, the gods are sending an envoy of sorts, someone to negotiate or keep track of you. Not sure which." Naruto released a derisive snort. "They're not done meddling yet? Fine. Let's get it over with." They trudged through soggy grass toward the big house. Warm lantern light spilled from the windows. Inside, they found Chiron conversing with a slender figure cloaked in midnight blue, a woman whose presence carried a chill. Her eyes were pale, like the moon's reflection on water. A faint smile curved her lips when Naruto and Percy stepped in. Chiron cleared his throat. "Naruto, Percy, this is Nyx's daughter, Hemera." Naruto's brow furrowed. "Nyx, as in the primordial night goddess?" Hemera gave a graceful nod. "Day and night coexisting in one family, yes. I often serve as a neutral observer. My mother keeps to the shadows, but I prefer a more direct approach." She cast Naruto a curious look, but her tone stayed carefully calm. "I've been asked to watch developments here. Eris's actions have roused interest, especially among older powers. We don't want a full-scale war tearing reality apart." Naruto folded his arms. "So you're here to babysit me?" Hemera gave a wry tilt of her head. "I'm here to see if you're truly a threat, or if you might be something more. My mother suspects your existence could tip delicate balances. I offer no illusions of friendship, but nor do I plan to sabotage you. I stand outside the usual Olympian spats." Percy looked uncertain, glancing at Chiron. Chiron spoke gently. "Naruto, Hemera's presence could be helpful. She's older than most Olympians, with her own brand of power. If Eris or others launch an attack, an ally like Hemera might tip the scales in our favor." Naruto gave her a once-over, sensing an aura that was neither purely light nor dark. Hemera's gaze held a faint spark of interest, maybe even amusement, when she noticed his scrutiny. That didn't stop him from speaking bluntly. "Fine. Tag along if you want. Just don't expect me to bow or anything." Her soft laugh barely disturbed the air. "Nor would I ask it." A faint tension shimmered between them. For a moment, Naruto thought of Eris's magnetic presence and Inayo's savage power. Hemera exuded a different energy, calm yet intense. This realm sure had no shortage of powerful women. Percy cleared his throat, apparently relieved no sparks of violence flew yet. "So what's the plan? We can't just wait for Eris to pop up again. She's definitely got something brewing." Chiron nodded. "Agreed. The Oracle's riddle mentioned a festival born of strife in a city of lies. We need to figure out exactly where that is. There are rumors of a gathering in a place called Illusion Square, a mortal city holding a hidden competition for immortals, demigods, even monsters who can disguise themselves. The prize is rumored to be an artifact of incredible destructive potential." Hemera's expression darkened. "Eris may well sponsor such a gathering to stoke discord. If that artifact is real, she'll want to see it used in the worst possible way. An event like that is perfect for generating conflict." Naruto felt a jolt of excitement. "So we crash the party, see if Eris or anyone else tries to grab me. Sounds more fun than standing around here." Chiron glanced at Hemera, who inclined her head. I'll go with them to ensure no line is crossed that triggers a cosmic meltdown. If Eris tries to manipulate the artifact, or lure Naruto deeper into chaos, at least I can bear witness. Maybe intervene, if it becomes too dire. Percy inhaled slowly. We might want backup. But then again, a big group could draw even more attention. Naruto shrugged. Let's keep it small. Less people getting in my way. Chiron didn't look entirely thrilled, but he capitulated. Very well. Hemura, Percy, and Naruto, be cautious. Return here if the risk escalates beyond your control. A short while later they set off. Hemura moved smoothly across the campgrounds, a distant sense of regal grace in her every step, ignoring the stares of curious demigods. Before leaving, she waved a hand, summoning a swirling portal of grayish light. Percy yelped, stumbling back a step. Naruto just cocked an eyebrow. Hemura said, I prefer not to waste time. This gateway will take us near the city where illusions gather. The three stepped through. Naruto once again felt that lurch of dimensional travel, swirling colors disorienting him. On the other side, they emerged into a bustling city alley, neon signs reflecting puddles of rain, an almost futuristic hum in the air. Taller skyscrapers glistened under a hazy sky. The place radiated a carnival of illusions. Random hollow projections or glamours concealed what was real from mortal eyes. Hemura led them onto a main street, eyes alert. The so-called illusion square should be near. I sense multiple wards, some of them very old. Sure enough, they reached a large plaza lined with stalls, bright banners, street performers, and illusions flickering in midair. Some illusions took the shape of mythical beasts, others formed kaleidoscopic bursts of color. Mortals, or perhaps lesser immortals, crowded the area. Laughter and music clashed in a chaotic medley. Percy muttered, It looks like a festival. Could this be the festival born of strife from the oracle? Naruto shrugged. Only one way to find out. The deeper they ventured, the more he felt his war sense prickle. Figures cloaked in magic lurked around corners, eyes glinting with suspicion or dark anticipation. Naruto half expected an ambush at any moment. Hemura remained calm, taking in the environment with watchful elegance. Percy gripped Riptide in his pocket, knuckles turning white. They came across a raucous tent advertising an unveiling of the World Breaker Blade. A dramatic sign scrawled over the entrance. A hawker in a jester's outfit shouted, Witness the might that can topple gods! Enter the ring of illusions, test your nerve! Naruto's warlust buzzed at the phrase topple gods. That definitely sounded like the sort of doomsday artifact Eris might dangle in front of participants. He stomped inside, Percy hot on his heels, Hemura gliding in behind them. Within the tent, smoke and strobing lights cast everything in swirling shadows. A central stage rose, surrounded by seats where an eclectic crowd whispered excitedly. On stage, a flamboyant figure with a half-mask bowed grandly. Ladies, gentlemen, immortals of all realms! Welcome to the unveiling of the World Breaker, a legendary weapon sealed away for centuries. The highest bidder, or the bravest victor, shall claim it tonight. The crowd roared approval. Naruto glanced around, noticing a hooded silhouette perched on a balcony seat, someone oddly familiar. The angle hid most of their face, but he sensed a faint aura reminiscent of Eris. Could be her, or one of her agents. Percy elbowed him. We have to make sure that blade doesn't fall into the wrong hands. This is definitely what the oracle hinted at. A murmur rushed through the crowd as the showman gestured to a large, runic chest on the stage. Feast your eyes on the sealed relic. Tonight, we hold a grand contest. Illusions, skill, cunning. Whoever proves victorious will earn the right to attempt opening the chest. Hemura's eyes narrowed. Eris is fueling conflict. She wants chaos from demigods, minor gods, and monsters all clashing for that weapon. Naruto bared his teeth in a grin. They want a contest? Sounds like my kind of party. Immediately, Percy hissed. Don't do anything reckless. We're just here to investigate. But Naruto ignored him, jumping forward with a confident swagger, pushing through the throng until he reached the stage. A few other would-be contenders bristled, but the showman beamed. We have our first challenger, folks. Percy groaned under his breath, following after him. Hemera's face remained unreadable as she trailed, though a faint, bemused glint lit her eyes. The showman cackled, spinning a wheel that displayed a kaleidoscope of illusions. For the first round, our intrepid challenger must face a legion of illusions made from his darkest nightmares. The crowd hollered. Illusion magic flared overhead, coalescing into shifting, monstrous shapes. Naruto felt no fear. Illusions only stoked his battle hunger. The shapes descended around him, red eyes gleaming, claws dripping with shadowy essence. He cracked his knuckles, letting the war blood hum in his veins. The illusions lunged as one, swirling chaos snapping at him. Naruto's answer was a Rasengan charged with flickers of Inio's destructive power. He tore through illusions, swirling them into sparkling dust. They reformed behind him, striking at the edges of his awareness. But Naruto roared, spinning in a lethal arc, unleashing raw chakra blasts. The entire tent shuddered under the impact. Within moments, the illusions shattered, leaving a hush of sparkling motes drifting to the floor. The crowd erupted in applause, amazed by the brute force. Percy rushed to Naruto's side, scowling. "You're making a spectacle. Eris will see you right away." Naruto just snorted. "So what? Let her come." The showman clapped. "Astounding, dear audience! Our challenger has passed the first test. Let the second test begin." Another swirl of illusions flickered, but this time it manifested a swirling labyrinth under their feet, dropping Percy and Naruto into a mind-bending maze. Hemera stepped to the edge, calmly observing from above, her presence seeming immune to these illusions. Percy cursed, hand clenched on riptide. "Great! Separated from Hemera. We need to keep our heads." Naruto's lip curled impatiently. "We don't have time for puzzles. Follow me." He closed his eyes, focusing on the war aura that pulsed inside him. The illusions twisted around them, walls shifting, floors contorting, but he unleashed a brute force approach, smashing through barrier after barrier with lances of chakra. The labyrinth flickered, each blow exposing the real boundaries beneath. Percy, struggling to keep up, stared in grudging admiration. Naruto had no intention of being thwarted by illusions. Step by step, they carved a path through the conjured maze. Soon, they burst out into the open again, back inside the main tent. Everything lurched. The illusions of the labyrinth dissolved, leaving them standing at the stage's center under a burst of fireworks. The showman seemed momentarily shocked that they'd broken free so quickly. The audience cheered. "That's enough," Naruto snapped. "Where's the final round? Or do you open that chest now?" The showman wobbled. "Well, typically we'd." A new voice interrupted, echoing through the tent. "I think our dear war scion deserves a real challenge." All heads turned to see that hooded figure rise from the balcony seat. The cowl fell back, revealing a woman with auburn hair and eyes full of cunning delight, Eris. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Percy tensed, stepping closer to Naruto. Hemera, still poised near the stage, straightened warily. Eris surveyed them all, a slow grin spreading across her face. "What fun you're having, Naruto, but illusions are child's play, aren't they? Shall we raise the stakes?" The showman, trembling, tried to protest, but Eris waved a hand. Chaos magic spilled across the tent, transforming the stage and seats into a warped coliseum. The crowd found themselves on elevated stands encased in purple flames. The runic chest that supposedly held the World Breaker blade hovered at the center of a new arena floor. Eris snapped her fingers. From the swirling magic emerged three monstrous hybrids, part wolf, part snake, part eagle, each exuding a rancid aura. Their eyes glowed red. "These," she purred, "are my hounds of discord. Defeat them, nephew, and the chest is yours to try and open." Naruto didn't hesitate. His warlust raged, chakra roiling in a visible red aura. Percy stood by him, blade ready. Hemera, spotting an opening, descended gracefully into the arena. Her presence radiated an older, cooler power that contrasted with Eris's mania. The first hound lunged, snapping with a wolf's jaw while snake tails hissed behind it. Naruto rammed a savage uppercut into its torso, feeling scales crack. The second bounded around, spitting acidic venom that Percy barely dodged. Hemra let out a quiet breath. A pale aura unfurled around her, and she flicked a hand, sending a lance of dim starlight piercing the creature's flank. It yelled, reeling away. The third hound soared overhead, eagle wings churning the air, diving with talons extended. Naruto bared his teeth. He vaulted upward, meeting it midair, forming a raisin-gun laced with violent sparks. The impact shredded the hound's feathers, dissolving it into black dust. He landed in a crouch, already pivoting to face the second one. Percy dashed in, slicing with riptide, while Hemra pinned the beast's movement with ribbons of cosmic brilliance. Naruto's palm strike shattered it in a concussive burst. One left. The first hound recovered, blood seeping from a cracked hide. It roared, aura flaring in mania. Naruto darted forward, a savage grin etched on his face. Even Percy's voice calling his name was drowned out by the thrill of the fight. The hound lunged, and Naruto slammed his fists in quick succession, unleashing a spinning barrage that hammered the beast into the arena floor. Black ichor splattered, and the hound collapsed, disintegrating. The unnatural coliseum fell silent. Eris watched, enthralled, from her balcony vantage. The crowd stared, half in terror, half in awe. Hemra exhaled, eyes drifting to the suspended chest. So, Eris, this is your plan? Give Naruto a shot at the World Breaker? Eris's laughter echoed. Why not? War and discord are siblings, after all. Maybe this blade is meant for him. Her gaze locked onto Naruto. Go on, nephew. Try to open it. I'm dying to see what havoc ensues. Percy grabbed Naruto's arm. That chest could be cursed. This whole thing's a setup. Naruto shrugged off Percy's grip, stepping forward with single-minded defiance. Even if it was a trap, he wanted to see what Eris was tempting him with. The chest's runes glowed faintly. Each step he took made them pulse faster, as if sensing his war aura. Hemra hovered near, caution in her voice. Don't be reckless. Whatever's inside might devour you, or unleash something unstoppable on everyone. Naruto set his jaw. I'm not afraid. The runes on the chest responded like a living heartbeat, warming under his palm. He poured a trickle of chakra into the seal. The runes shimmered red, a warlike glow. With a deafening crack, the lid splintered. A swirl of black and crimson light surged out, forcing Naruto to shield his eyes. Percy stumbled back, and Hemra raised a protective barrier of pale radiance. Eris merely watched, licking her lips in anticipation. When the glow subsided, an ornate sword hovered above the ruins of the chest, blade carved from onyx metal, etched with swirling patterns of chaos. Its presence radiated raw destruction. Naruto could feel it pulsing in tune with his heart, as if it recognized him. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Slowly, Naruto reached out and gripped the hilt. A jolt of scorching energy tore through him, searing his nerves. For an instant, he felt a mind-numbing rage that threatened to swallow his identity. But just as quickly, he fought it down with the iron will forged in battles back in the shinobi world. Blood pounded in his ears. The blade's chaotic fury resonated with his war aura, forging a dangerous synergy. Eris giggled, her voice echoing around them. Oh, you actually tamed it. How delightful. Let's see you wield it, dear nephew. Naruto raised the sword. Energy crackled along the onyx blade. He could sense that if he unleashed it fully, entire buildings might crumble. But an undercurrent of caution prickled in his mind. This weapon could easily become a double-edged trap if he lost control. Percy moved closer, fear and concern warring in his eyes. Hemra's aura fluttered in warning. Eris spread her arms wide, as if hosting the grandest spectacle. Well? Aren't you going to test it out? The city around us offers so many targets. Naruto's grip tightened. Part of him wanted to swing the blade skyward, see if it could slice the clouds or even break open the heavens. Another part recognized Eris's twisted game. He glared at her, eyes blazing. I'm not your puppet. Her expression shifted, annoyance flickered. No, but your mother and I share a domain. War. Discord. They naturally entwine. Eventually, you'll realize we're two sides of the same coin. Before Naruto could reply, Hemera stepped in, voice edged with quiet power. I won't let you incite a massacre here, Eris. Return to your realm, or face me. Eris wrinkled her nose in mock disappointment. You're no fun, Daylight. Very well. I've sown enough seeds for now. Her gaze flicked back to Naruto, a slow smirk curling her lips. Keep the sword if you wish. One day you may come to me willingly, starving for chaos. Then she vanished, leaving a swirl of purple haze in her wake. The illusions shrouding the Colosseum fell away, returning the tent to its initial layout. The battered chest lay in splinters, the curious crowd blinking away their confusion. Most mortals and lesser immortals probably had no idea how close they came to catastrophic ruin. Naruto felt the onyx blade vibrate in his hand. He glanced at Percy, who exhaled shakily. That sword, you sure it's safe? Hemera approached, her calm demeanor masking concern. It's a fragment of old chaos magic. Very volatile. Yet you've formed some bond with it. Naruto slid it into a sheath that had materialized among the splintered chest shards, sensing the blade's hungry aura pressing against him. I'll handle it, he said bluntly. Percy pressed a hand to his forehead. Let's just get out of here before Eris changes her mind. You've got your doomsday sword. We can figure out what to do with it back at camp. Naruto turned away from the stage, ignoring the gawking crowd. Hemera conjured a swirl of light to mask their exit. As they threaded through the festival throngs, illusions flickered everywhere, dancers made of moonlight, monstrous silhouettes of chaos, remnants of Eris's handiwork. They left the main plaza, ducking down a side street. At the alley's end, Hemera raised her arms, summoning another grayish gateway. The moment the portal stabilized, they hurried through, not wanting to linger where Eris's influence was thick. Once again, that stomach-churning sensation of dimensional travel swallowed them whole. They stumbled out onto the grassy clearing near Camp Half-Blood's boundary just as the sun crested the horizon. Percy doubled over, hands on his knees, gulping in fresh air. Hemera stood poised, regal as ever, though a faint tension flickered in her eyes. Naruto shrugged off the dizziness, focusing instead on the sword's ominous weight at his side. Chiron, alerted to their arrival, came trotting up. That was quick. Did you? He trailed off, noticing the black blade. His eyes widened. Tell me that isn't what I think it is. Hemera nodded gravely. Naruto opened the chest. It contained a chaos-forged weapon capable of unimaginable destruction. Eris all but gifted it to him. Demigods who'd gathered murmured in alarm. Percy tried to give a more thorough summary: illusions, the monstrous hounds, Eris's manipulations. Chiron's face grew more troubled with each sentence. Finally, he turned to Naruto, voice calm but urgent. That sword is a ticking bomb. If you can't keep its influence in check... Naruto cut him off. Relax. I'm not some mindless puppet. Chiron inhaled, reining in frustration. You're tied to Inio, and now you hold a chaos weapon courtesy of Eris. Every step you take draws you deeper into the Pantheon's conflicts. We can only ask that you tread carefully. The mortal world, and ours, could suffer if things spiral. Naruto set his jaw, disliking the reminder but unwilling to show doubt. I'll handle it. If the gods have a problem, they can come face me themselves. A murmur rippled among the onlooking demigods. Some eyes shone with awe, others with wariness. Hemera cast Naruto an unreadable look. I will remain nearby, at least for now. My mother wishes to see how events unfold. If you lose yourself to war or chaos, I have orders to intervene. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Sounds like you don't trust me. She gave a polite inclination of her head. Trust is earned, not given. And you've made quite the impression already. Despite her formal tone, a faint spark of curiosity lingered in her pale gaze. He turned away, tension knotting his shoulders. The sword at his hip seemed to hum with faint hunger, as if it wanted him to start a battle right now. He wondered if every step forward would bring new shadows trailing behind him. Percy clapped him on the shoulder, an awkward attempt at camaraderie. Look, we're all in over our heads. But you don't have to do this alone, you know. Naruto frowned. He remembered how he used to crave acceptance in Konoha, yet here he was, repelling people left and right. Still, Percy had proven loyal, if annoyingly moral. Maybe it wasn't so bad having him around, especially with looming threats from every angle. He shrugged, not fully meeting Percy's eye. Yeah, well, you do what you want. I'm going to train. Gotta see what this sword can do. He strode away, ignoring whispers that followed him through the camp. Hemra watched, silently stepping aside as he passed. He didn't bother with greetings or pleasantries, heading straight for a secluded corner of the forest beyond the cabins. Once there, he drew the onyx blade. Energy crackled along the metal, resonating with his war aura. He let out a slow breath, swinging it experimentally at a nearby boulder. The blade's arc unleashed a rippling shockwave that shattered the rock in an explosion of dust and debris. Birds squawked in alarm, fleeing the treetops. Naruto's eyes glowed faintly. The sword responded to his will, amplifying it. But he also sensed it pulling on something deeper, like it wanted to siphon the chaotic impulses swirling within him. The synergy could be unstoppable, or it could burn him alive if he lost focus. Either way, power like this was too tempting to ignore. He tried a few more strikes, each one carving deep gouges into the earth. His breath quickened. It felt good, exhilarating, like an extension of his identity as a demigod of war. But every slash left him more on edge, more aggressive, like a fire that couldn't be quenched. Eventually, he forced himself to stop, planting the blade tip in the dirt, breathing heavily. A quiet voice behind him made him spin. Hemra stood there, arms folded across her flowing cloak. Impressive, and dangerous. Naruto scowled. You spying on me? She tilted her head. Observing. You're wrestling with something beyond mortal ken. Even most gods would hesitate to wield that blade unsealed. He yanked the sword free, slid it into the makeshift scabbard at his waist. I'm not most gods. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. No, you're not. You're an outlier, both shinobi and demigod, child of the war goddess and container of the nine-tailed beast. And now you bear a chaos blade. It's quite a convergence. He eyed her. Is this the part where you lecture me? You sound like the rest, telling me how dangerous I am. She shook her head slowly, stepping closer. I won't insult you with more warnings. But I am curious, do you truly crave the path of endless battle, or do you simply not know any other way? Naruto tensed, a flicker of old pain stirring. I've been fighting my whole life. First for acceptance, then for survival. Now it just feels like everything is pushing me toward war. My mother's blood, Eris, this blade, it's all culminating. Maybe I'm sick of being shoved around. Maybe I want to seize control of my destiny. Hemra regarded him quietly, her gaze neither pitying nor disapproving. That's your right. I only caution that the line between mastering war and being consumed by it can be razor thin. He grimaced. I'll figure it out. She lingered, as if weighing whether to say more. Finally, she reached out and gently placed a hand on the sword's hilt, just for a brief moment. A soft swirl of her cosmic aura nudged against the blade's chaotic energy, causing a faint crackle that lit the air around them. Her pale eyes flickered with interest, then she withdrew. If you ever require my insight, I'm not difficult to find. Then she melted into the forest shadows as gracefully as she'd arrived, leaving Naruto alone with his swirling thoughts. The warlust and the sword's chaotic hum made the air feel charged, but somehow Hemra's brief presence had cooled his head. He wondered if that was part of her power, the calm between night and day, easing raging conflict. Sighing, he turned back toward camp. On the way, he pondered the swirl of formidable goddesses crossing his path, his mother in Io, savage and proud, Eris, cunning and tempting him to embrace destruction, Athena, aloof yet dangerous, Hemra, neutral but strangely watchful. Something in him smoldered at the idea that he could hold the attention of such beings. If he played his cards right, forging connections, or a harem, if it came to that, might be the key to thriving in this realm. A bold thought, maybe outrageous, but it lingered all the same. Back at the main thoroughfare, Percy spotted him. Hey, you alright? You were gone a while. Naruto shrugged. Just making sure the sword isn't gonna blow up. Percy glanced uneasily at the sheath. Look, man. I know you're not the warm and fuzzy type, but we're dealing with some high-stakes stuff. I'd hate to see it end in total annihilation. Maybe we should figure out a plan for that sword, or at least ways to keep you from going on a rampage. Naruto's eyes narrowed. You think I can't control myself? Percy stepped back slightly, palms raised. I'm just saying it's a lot to handle. We can find ways to channel that power without letting Eris hijack it. Naruto let out a slow breath, reining in the snap of anger that threatened. He had to remind himself Percy wasn't an enemy, just a concerned friend, albeit an annoying one at times. Fine. If you have ideas, I'll listen. But I'm not sealing this power away. They headed toward the camp's training grounds. Some demigods practicing swordsmanship gave them wide berth, eyes straying to the black blade at Naruto's hip. Percy had the decency to wave reassuringly, but the tension remained. For the rest of the day, they hashed out a minimal plan with Chiron and Hemra: keep the sword under observation, research old myths about chaos-forged relics, and watch for Eris's next move. Naruto endured the discussions, though all the talk felt like a cage. He bristled at the constraints. By dusk, the meeting dispersed, and Naruto found himself back in his cabin, leaning against a corner, while the setting sun cast long shadows across the floor. He thumbed the blade's hilt, listening to its faint hum, like an inferno waiting to be unleashed. A flicker of memory caught him: Eris's taunting promise, Inayo's savage pride, the prophecy about a festival of strife. So many puzzle pieces. He rose abruptly, restless. Outside, the camp glowed with torchlight. He passed by a cluster of Aphrodite cabin girls who giggled in hushed voices, eyeing him boldly. One stepped forward, a flirty glint in her gaze. Hey, tough guy. You wanna hang out tonight? Her tone was half sincere, half mocking, but definitely intrigued. Naruto paused, uncertain. Part of him was tempted by the attention. He never got it in Konoha, and it stirred something in him. But he also had zero patience for idle flirting right now. Not interested, he said curtly. She shrugged, unimpressed, exchanging smirks with her friends. Suit yourself, she said, tossing her hair. They sauntered off. He continued toward the edge of camp, frustration pounding in his chest. The thought of forging alliances with powerful goddesses was more appealing than trite flirting with demigods. The notion of a harem with mortal-born demigods felt underwhelming, especially given what he'd tasted of Inayo's aura or Eris's cosmic presence. That entire idea was maddening, but he wasn't about to dismiss it either. Reaching a secluded spot by a gently trickling creek, he slumped against a tree. The night air was cool, dotted with fireflies. The chatter of the camp drifted faintly in the distance. He closed his eyes, letting the chorus of crickets soothe him. Footsteps rustled the grass nearby. He snapped his eyes open, half drawing the sword out of reflex, only to see Hemra again. She lifted a hand, non-threatening. You're quite the wanderer. He relaxed marginally, sliding the blade back. Could say the same about you. Thought you had envoy duties or something. She raised a graceful shoulder. Official duties, yes. But I also wanted to check on you. Something about the conflict swirling around you fascinates me. I'm not sure if it's curiosity, caution, or something else. Naruto watched her carefully. Her presence was different from Eris's seductive chaos. There was a measured calm in Hemra's aura, yet an undercurrent of cosmic power, like daybreak itself, quiet yet unstoppable. He found himself strangely drawn to it, even if he never admitted out loud. He forced a scoff. Great, so you're fascinated. Is that your polite way of calling me a ticking bomb? Her lips twitched in a faint, almost teasing smile. You are a bomb. But bombs can be harnessed for demolition or for forging new shapes. That's the question, which path will you choose? Naruto glared at the creek's surface, avoiding her gaze. I'm done taking directions from others. Shinobi gods, fate, they've all tried to shape me. If I destroy or create, it'll be my choice. Hemra inclined her head slightly, stepping closer until the hem of her midnight blue robe brushed his foot. That resolve might be what sets you apart. Just be aware that some among the Pantheon see you as a threat to be contained or manipulated. And some, like Eris, see you as a spark to start a wildfire. He exhaled, tension coiling in his neck. Then they can all line up and see what happens if they push me. A small silence fell. Fireflies drifted lazily around them. Hemera studied him, her voice softening. It can be lonely, standing against the gods. Naruto felt a pang, remembering how lonely it was as a child in Konoha, shunned for the Nine Tails. Yet now he was older, jaded, hardened. Loneliness is nothing new, he muttered. She hesitated, as if weighing an impulsive choice. Then, with surprising gentleness, she lifted a hand to lightly touch his shoulder. The contact made him stiffen, but he didn't pull away. A glimmer of her tranquil aura settled around them, easing the storm of warlust in his chest. I can't promise you allies among the Pantheon. But if you ever want counsel or simply quiet, I'm here. Something inside him twisted, a reluctant acknowledgement of gratitude that he didn't know how to express. He cleared his throat. You're not half bad for an observer. A soft laugh escaped her, barely more than a whisper. Take care, war's heir. The night won't stay calm forever. Then, with that mysterious smile, she stepped back, letting her aura fade, and slipped away into the darkness. He watched her go, a swirl of conflicting feelings roiling in his gut. Since arriving in this realm, his life had spun into a rapid chain of events, discovering his lineage, battling monsters, awakening new powers, crossing paths with gods, some tempting, some threatening, some surprisingly empathetic. And it wasn't over. Eris had stirred up a grand stage for Caius, leaving him holding a weapon of unimaginable potential. Inaio's shadow loomed over his every move. Ares, Athena, and the rest of Olympus stood on the sidelines, likely plotting, while Hemera watched from a neutral vantage. Even the mortal demigods eyed him warily. Naruto sank down, letting the night's hush envelop him. He was no hero. He didn't pretend to be righteous or kind. If anything, his rude defiance and thirst for battle only grew stronger. But he also didn't want to be a mindless herald of destruction. To find a middle path, his own path, might mean forging alliances of a different kind. He recalled how unflinching Inaio's gaze was, how Eris teased him, how Hemera's calm lingered in his chest. With each brush against these deities, he caught a glimpse of something that both tempted and aggravated him, a sense that power, respect, and something deeper could be his, if he was willing to play the god's game in his own way. He closed his eyes, shifting position to lean back against the tree. Daylight was gone, replaced by starlight overhead, faint and far. The sword at his hip vibrated softly, as if responding to his mood. Tomorrow promised more negotiations, more friction, and likely more combat. Good. He'd take them all on, Olympians, monsters, or illusions of fate. For now, he let himself drift in that precarious space between calm and war, between what he was and what he might become. The fourth act of his collision with the Greek pantheon was unfolding, and Naruto wouldn't settle for anything less than total freedom, total power, and total control of his destiny. If that meant forging a harem of goddesses who recognized his worth, then so be it. If it meant facing the combined wrath of Olympus, he'd burn that bridge too. Somewhere beyond the tree-line, a faint wind rustled the leaves, carrying distant laughter, Eris's echoes of mocking glee, or perhaps Hemera's gentle hum. Naruto exhaled slowly, a wry smile creeping over his lips. Let the gods watch. Let them try to shape him. In the end, he'd carve out his own legend, and none would stand in his way. Rain hammered down in sheets, rattling the windows of the big house. Even by Camp Half-Blood standards, the atmosphere was unnervingly tense. Naruto paced inside the war room. A makeshift command center Chiron had set up, strewn with maps of Greece, the mortal US, and the shinobi world. His onyx sword crackled with faint red sparks at his hip, hungering for conflict. Tucked in the corner, Percy Jackson leaned against the wall, arms folded, gaze uneasy. Across the room, Hemera stood near a lantern, her presence like a cool dawn in contrast to the oppressive tension. A handful of senior demigods crowded around a table, flipping through ancient scrolls and cross-referencing cryptic prophecies. Ever since Naruto had claimed the Chaos-Forged sword, monster attacks had escalated beyond anything the camp had seen in years. Storms and unnatural omens plagued the horizon. Even the immortal realm seemed to be in disarray. The uneasy hush carried through the camp like a funeral dirge. Suddenly, hooves clattered on the porch. Chiron burst in, face drawn. "They've come through. The gods have called an emergency gathering on Olympus," he announced. "This time, it isn't just about you, Naruto. It's about an ancient threat stirring. Something's broken free from Tartarus, spurred on by Eris's chaos. I suspect she's fanning the flames to create the perfect war." Naruto's ears perked up. "Ancient threat? You mean like a titan?" Percy pushed off from the wall. "We've already beaten Kronos once," he said quietly. "But there are other primeval forces we barely know about. If Eris is fueling this, it could be even worse." Hemra turned from the lantern, her pale eyes flickering. "A monstrous titan named Phorcys was rumored to dwell in the deepest trenches of Tartarus, an abomination of swirling darkness. If Eris managed to draw him out, the entire world is in peril. He's said to command monstrous sea behemoths, storms, and illusions that melt sanity." Naruto felt his war blood surge with anticipation. Something big enough to shake Olympus was precisely the kind of confrontation that made his pulse race. "So the Pantheon's in full panic mode?" he asked with a smirk. Chiron gave a weary nod. "Yes. Zeus has demanded all major gods gather to mount a defense. Io, your mother, will be there. Ares too. Athena's leading the strategic discussion. They've extended an invitation to you as well." He cleared his throat. "In truth, they can't ignore you anymore. If you're a destabilizing factor, they want to keep you in sight. And if you're as powerful as rumors say, they need your help." Percy raised an eyebrow at Naruto. "So what's it gonna be? Are we heading up there? Or are you gonna let them handle it themselves?" Naruto snorted. "Like I'd pass on a fight this big. If a titan's about to break the world, I want a front row seat. And if Eris shows her face, even better." Hemra's gaze flicked between them. "I'll open a portal. Better to arrive swiftly than travel through mortal traffic. But be warned, tensions on Olympus are dangerously high. This is no casual visit." Naruto grinned, baring his teeth. "They can't scare me. Let's go." Moments later, a ribbon of gray light swept them into Olympus's grand courtyard. Naruto stepped off the portal's edge, boots skidding on polished marble. The air crackled with divine energy. Gods and goddesses in various states of alarm bustled about, some wearing armor, some brandishing gleaming weapons. Lightning sparked overhead, courtesy of a furious Zeus pacing near his palace. Enormous banners flapped in the gale, starlight painting the towering spires in uneasy tones. Naruto spotted Io across the courtyard. She wore jagged armor etched with archaic symbols. Her expression was fierce and triumphant, as though the looming apocalypse excited her. The moment she caught sight of Naruto, a savage grin touched her lips. She strode over, ignoring the way lesser deities scattered. Around her shoulders flickered arcs of red lightning. "My son!" Io greeted, voice low but charged. "You've grown bolder since our last encounter. Holding that chaos sword, too?" She gave a curt nod at the hilt by his side. "I knew you'd embrace our legacy." Naruto shrugged, lips curling into a cocky smirk. "Maybe I'm just using it to handle bigger threats. Titans that want to wreck the world, for instance." A short, bitter laugh escaped Io. "Wreck or rule, does it matter so long as we get to fight?" But then her tone dropped an octave, serious. "Don't let Eris lead you astray. She's a cunning spider. If she's involved with forces, it's to unleash the maximum chaos." Before Naruto could respond, Zeus's voice boomed across the courtyard. "Enough idle chatter! All deities, gather in the council hall. This threat demands unity." He shot a pointed glare at Naruto, as if still uncertain about letting a child of Io stand among them. But times were desperate, and Naruto was here by invitation. The council hall soared with marble columns that glowed faintly in the stormy light. A grand amphitheater-style arrangement seated the major Olympians, while lesser gods and distinguished guests stood behind. Naruto noted Athena's stern gaze pinned on him the instant he stepped in with Percy and Hemera. Ares lounged with barely contained aggression, scanning the room for any excuse to pick a fight. When everyone settled, Zeus took the center stage, thunder dancing at his fingertips. We have confirmed sightings in the depths of the western seas. Phorcys, an ancient titan of illusions and storms, stirs from Tartarus's breach. He's already unleashed monstrous oceanic beasts upon mortal ships. Coastal cities are under siege. Poseidon, seated with a grim expression, rumbled. My domain is war-torn. Whirlpools and phantom storms block my attempts to quell the chaos. Phorcys is twisted beyond most titans. He can warp the mind, breed abominations, and the worst part, he's harnessing Eris's chaos as a catalyst. At that, a ripple of tension spread. Even Naruto felt a flicker of unease. Typhoons and illusions could devastate entire populations, leaving them defenseless against an onslaught of leviathan-like beasts. Was Eris truly behind this, or was she just stoking the flames? Athena stood, voice steady. We must unite our powers to contain Phorcys. The chance of a second Titan war looms. A frontal assault at sea is impossible while illusions swirl. We need cunning, not brute force. Ares slammed a fist on the stone railing. Cunning? You'd have us scurry like mice. Let's gather an army, meet Phorcys head-on, drown him in blood. Io sneered. Your father, Kronos, tried that. The Titan thrives in illusions. A direct charge is suicide. War is more than just brute force, Ares. Haven't you learned that in all these centuries? Ares snarled, fists sparking. Tension threatened to explode, until Zeus's thunderclap shook the hall. Enough. We face an existential crisis, not petty feuds. While the gods argued, Naruto's gaze flicked over the assembly. He spotted Eris leaning casually against a pillar at the back, unnoticed by most, arms folded, a smirk on her auburn lips. She offered him a mocking little wave. A flutter of rage and strange excitement coiled in his gut. Phorcys draws near the mortal shore. Poseidon continued. If he makes landfall with his illusions, the mortal realm will plunge into madness. We must find a way to break his illusions or trap him before that happens. A new voice echoed. I can disrupt illusions of darkness if I have a direct link. All heads turned toward Hemera. She stood tall, chin lifted. My cosmic domain repels shadows. If we get close enough, I can carve a path for others to strike Phorcys. But it won't be easy. His illusions are rumored to ensnare even gods. Zeus nodded grudgingly. Then let that be the plan. Hemera, Athena, and those you choose shall form the vanguard to breach the illusions. Poseidon, you rally your forces to contain the sea monsters. Ares, coordinate with Artemis to hold the coastline. Io. He hesitated. Do what you must. Just don't turn this into a wider war. Io's laughter, sharp and fierce, cut the tension. I promise nothing. Naruto stepped forward. Count me in on the vanguard, he said bluntly. Phorcys wants chaos, Eris is lurking, and if illusions are the battlefield, I'm not backing down. Athena's gray eyes narrowed. This isn't about your ego. One misstep could doom us. He shot her a glare. Then I'll make sure not to misstep. Zeus eyed Naruto with reluctant acceptance. So be it. The war heir shall go, but keep him on a leash, he said to Hemera. She dipped her head without comment. 2 hours later, the entire pantheon mobilized. Dark clouds churned overhead as Olympians departed in swirls of wind and lightning. Demigods from Camp Half-Blood formed squads to defend key mortal sites. Percy joined Poseidon's group to handle threats in the sea. Naruto, Hemera, and a small cadre of skilled gods soared to the western coastline via a conjured gateway. In the distance, the ocean writhed with unnatural swells. Flickers of illusions bent the horizon, conjuring mirages of towers or serpentine shapes that disappeared as soon as they came into focus. Thunder crashed. The battlefield spread across a storm-lashed beach where battered mortals fled, ships in flames wrecked against jagged rocks. Naruto could feel the vile aura saturating the air, like a living nightmare pressing on his psyche. Hemera raised her hands, weaving filaments of pale starlight that cut through swirling illusions. Beside her, Athena unleashed a barrage of golden mental barriers, safeguarding them against the worst mental onslaughts. Far out at sea, monstrous shapes emerged. Leviathans the size of mansions churned the waves, shrieking with alien cries. Naruto glimpsed Percy perched on a wave crest, riptide flashing as he led an underwater cavalry. Lightning bolts from Zeus arced across the clouds, slamming into the ocean with ear-splitting force. Clashes of light and shadow painted the horizon. Naruto's group advanced down the beach. A gaping rift in reality shimmered offshore, spitting illusions into the mortal plane. Within that rift, a shape loomed, massive and contorted, part serpentine, part chimera of abyssal horrors. It had no single face, just a swirl of nightmare fuel. Forces. The Titan's voice rumbled like distant thunder, echoing in the minds of every living thing. Mortals, gods, all shall drown in madness. My illusions are the true nature of this cosmos, chaos without end. Surrender and lose yourselves. A wave of psychic terror crashed into them. Several lesser gods staggered, crying out. Naruto's sword flared hot at his side, the chaos forging a temporary shield in his mind. He gritted his teeth, forcing the illusions back. Not today! Hemera's aura blazed with pale brilliance, cutting a path through the swirling nightmare. She and Athena hurled beams of cosmic light that battered at the swirling form. The Titan let out a rage-filled roar, lashing the coastline with tendrils of shadow. Where the shadow touched, reality warped, creating black pits that threatened to swallow them. Naruto sprinted forward, eyes burning with warlust, heart pounding with adrenaline. He slashed the onyx blade, unleashing a raw shockwave that tore into one of the Titan's tendrils. Thick black ichor sizzled where the blade struck. Forces shrieked, illusions writhing in agony. The monstrous swirl reared back, revealing a grotesque half-seen maw. Lightning lanced overhead. Zeus and Poseidon were driving back monstrous spawn, but they couldn't seal the rift. That left Naruto and the vanguard on the beach. Hemera stretched her arms upward, voice tight with effort. I can hold back the illusions, for now. But we must strike at Force's core! Athena fired a barrage of astral spears, pinpointing a writhing mass in the Titan's center. Naruto recognized the opening. He bounded across swirling debris, war aura roaring. Lashing out with a Rasengan fueled by both Ninetales' chakra and the Chaos Sword's power, he plowed straight into the Titan's hide. Force's illusions exploded outward in a fury of shrieking souls and twisting shadows. Naruto bellowed, refusing to be tossed aside, forging a path deeper into that nightmare swirl. For a moment, everything was chaos. Naruto felt illusions tearing at his psyche, memories of loneliness in Konoha, the hatred from the villagers, the betrayal of gods. But his war-born defiance burned hotter. He roared, hacking at the illusions with the onyx blade, refusing to yield. Through the vortex, he caught glimpses of Hemera's radiance slicing in from behind, anchoring him in reality. Finally, he reached what looked like a beating heart of swirling blackness, Force's core. The Titan screeched, fracturing illusions in a last-ditch attempt to repel him. Naruto raised the sword high, chaos energy crackling along the edge. A memory of Erasa's grin flashed through his mind, then Inayo's triumphant laugh. He poured every ounce of warlust, Ninetales' fury, and raw determination into one final slash. A thunderous impact jolted reality. The Titan's howls reverberated across the storm-tossed sky. The swirling illusions collapsed, the monstrous body rending apart in an eruption of black luminescence. A final echoing roar reverberated, and then Forces disintegrated, the rift swallowing up the last shards of his corrupted essence. The beach fell silent, save for the pounding of rain on the sand. The illusions that had tormented the coastline flickered out like dying embers. Naruto stumbled back, chest heaving, soaked to the bone. The onyx blade trembled in his grip, still coursing with chaotic power. Hemera appeared beside him, her pale aura dimming. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. It's over, she breathed. Across the beach, Athena lowered her guard, warily scanning for any remnants of illusions. None remained. High above, Zeus and Poseidon finished subduing the monstrous spawn. A resounding cheer began among the other gods and demigods, relief mixing with awe. The Titan threat had been banished before it fully manifested on land. Some collapsed to their knees, exhausted. Others murmured about Naruto's savage final blow. In the aftermath, the Pantheon reassembled on the battered beach. Debris and monster remains littered the shore, but the rift was gone. Naruto stood apart from the throng, gazing out at the roiling gray sea. He could still feel echoes of illusions tugging at his mind, but the war lust in his veins felt satisfied. For now. Percy splashed over, soaked and grinning wearily. Dude, I saw that final hit from out there. You practically cut a titan in half. Naruto wiped rain from his face, offering a brusque nod. He was in my way. A swirl of red lightning signaled Inayo's approach. She surveyed the carnage, eyes shining with twisted pride. Magnificent. I suppose the Olympians owe you thanks, child. You made me proud this day. Her tone was half mocking, half genuine. Naruto snorted, refusing to let her motherly approval overshadow his own sense of accomplishment. Athena joined them, looking uncharacteristically subdued. Your recklessness paid off, she admitted grudgingly to Naruto. Forces would have consumed the coastline if not for your blade. Maybe we underestimated you. Naruto crossed his arms, refusing to bow. Guess you did. Nearby, Hemura watched quietly, an unreadable expression behind her calm face. She caught Naruto's eye and gave a small, approving dip of her head. For a moment, he thought of how each goddess he'd encountered, Inayo, Eris, Hemura, even the distant Athena, had recognized something in him. A new path, a new factor. His mother's domain, plus the Chaos Sword, made him a wild card among gods. And he wasn't done exploring that advantage. Zeus stormed over, thunder still crackling around his shoulders. His gaze swept the devastation, then fixed on Naruto. You've done a service today. Perhaps I was hasty in my judgment. The words seemed forced. But do not assume Olympus is your playground. If you bring war on us, we will respond. Are we clear? Naruto met Zeus's thunderous stare without flinching. Crystal. With a dismissive grunt, Zeus turned away to confer with Poseidon about restoring balance to the seas. As the crowd dispersed, a swirl of purple sparkles danced behind a ruined pillar. Naruto tensed, half expecting Eris to appear. Indeed, she materialized for a fleeting moment, arms folded, offering him a sly, knowing smile before blinking out again. No doubt she would keep plotting from the shadows, possibly emboldened by the day's chaos. Chiron trotted up, relief etched on his face. Well done, Naruto. You've prevented a catastrophe. Naruto shrugged. Just kept the fight interesting. Percy chuckled softly. You really can't accept a compliment like a normal person, can you? Nah, Naruto answered. Normal's not in my blood. As dusk settled, the battered coastline flickered with torchlight. Groups of demigods and minor gods handled the wounded and secured the area. Repairs to the mortal world would take time. Storms and illusions had caused massive damage. But Forsus was gone, sealed back into the pit of Tartarus. The immediate threat had passed. Naruto lingered near a rocky outcropping by the sea. His black sword was sheathed, its chaotic resonance quieter now. At his side, Hemura emerged from the gloom, the gentle luminescence of her aura cutting through the drizzle. Neither spoke for a beat, listening to the wind sigh over the waves. Finally, she said, You're returning to Camp Half-Blood, I presume? He nodded. For now. This realm's not done giving me surprises. And I've got people there I don't entirely hate. A soft smile ghosted her lips. A high compliment, coming from you. Silence stretched again, then she exhaled. I'll remain in my mother's domain for a time. But should you need me, call. The fates haven't finished weaving your story. Her eyes flickered, a hint of something warmer. And I have a feeling you'll stand at the center of whatever's coming next. Naruto shrugged, trying to hide a strange flutter in his chest. Yeah. Count on it. Hemura inclined her head, a silent goodbye, then vanished in a swirl of starlight. He stared at the spot where she'd been, remembering how her aura had tempered his warlust more than once. A smirk tugged at his mouth, thinking of all the goddesses who'd crossed his path. Eris's cunning wiles, Inayo's fierce devotion to carnage, Hemura's calm watchfulness, each drew him in ways he never expected. He was no hero, but neither was he just a raging force. Something more was unfolding. By midnight, he and Percy rejoined the camp forces, crossing back into Camp Half-Blood's boundary under a sky heavy with stars. The tension that had weighed everyone down seemed a little lighter, though no one dared fully celebrate yet. They'd survived a Titan's assault, but the Pantheon's politics and future conflicts still loomed. Naruto took one last look at the night sky, imagining 1,000 eyes gazing back, gods, monsters, his mother, potential allies or enemies. He felt the Chaos Sword's faint pulse. A day would come when the Pantheon might push him too far, or Eris might unveil an even greater threat. And in some corner of his mind, he wondered if forging his own court of powerful allies, or more, among the goddesses might be the key to rewriting the rules. A harem of immortals, each with her own domain, loyal to him by choice or fascination. The thought was as bold as it was thrilling. For now, victory was enough. The warlust in him, momentarily sated, allowed a rare moment of quiet. Naruto let out a long breath, glancing sidelong at Percy. "You sure you're not heading back to Manhattan tonight?" Percy laughed tiredly. "Nah, I need some sleep. Besides, I want to see if you manage not to blow up the camp by morning." Naruto snorted. "We'll see," he said, steps crunching on the pathway. The flicker of torches guided them back to the cabins, safe for the moment. But the glint in Naruto's eyes said it all. There would be more battles to come. More meddling gods. More illusions, wars, and maybe even alliances with those bold enough to meet him halfway. At the threshold of his cabin, he paused, staring at the swirling patterns in the night sky. A faint echo of Inayo's voice coursed through him. He was no one's pawn, and if the day's battle had proved anything, it was that the war heir could stand among gods as both rival and potential equal. Tomorrow, he'd wake to a new dawn of possibilities. If any goddess, mortal, or monster tried to chain him, they'd discover he was unstoppable. And if some few decided to stand with him, or at his side, well, that might be one outcome worth exploring. Cracking his knuckles, Naruto slipped inside, mind already blazing with plans. Olympus might never be the same. And the shinobi world, if he ever returned, wouldn't know what hit it. Let them all watch. Let them tremble. He was the son of Inayo, heir to war and chaos, and his legend was only beginning.